Chapter 632. Instant Steps. Ning Zitong, who was in the VIP seats, lifted her eyelids. Light gathered in her eyes, as though the sun had pierced through the clouds. It was only at this moment that she truly believed what Dong Baxian had said previously. Wang Ke was extraordinary. She wasn't the only one. The physical invulnerability experts present and in front of the screens were all shaken as they got to know Wang Ke again. 5 years, no, maybe 3 years later, he would have the strength to fight for the title. Bam! A short but intense explosion sounded. The air expanded into white clouds, crushing Wang Ke's remaining figure. It also shook Lu Cheng's fist and the faint purple and gold colors that had just merged into one. Under normal circumstances, the explosion of 9 rotations of 5 flames. Descent of the sun would cause indiscriminate damage to the surroundings. However, there were 3 layers of protection when it was used. Firstly, the order and direction of the fusion was unique. It was difficult for others to comprehend and could effectively cancel out the waves that impacted the user's body. Secondly, the arm had to be swung, the muscles had to be taut, and the speed had to be extremely fast. This would bring about strong wind pressure and interfere with the trajectory of the explosion, like an invisible barrier. Thirdly, it connected heaven and earth, affecting nature and restricting the general direction of the explosion. These would weaken the power of descent of the sun, but they would protect the user of the move, preventing them from harming themselves every time they used the move. It would always result in a lose-lose situation. In this way, the remaining fish that escaped the net would be nothing more than a breeze to an external invulnerability expert. If they really wanted to perish together, they could cancel such protection in exchange for the ultimate effect. But now, the power of the sonic boom had destroyed Lu Cheng's wind pressure barrier, shook the fusion process of the 5 fireballs, and interfered with the connection between his spirit, root pulp, and the surroundings. In other words, 9 rotations of 5 flames. Descent of the sun would explode uncontrollably. Lu Cheng's punch landed and saw Wang Ke disappear, leaving behind a sonic boom. His heart skipped a beat, and his pupils contracted to the size of needles. In the blink of an eye, he didn't have time to think about how to salvage the situation. He immediately gave up control of 9 rotations of 5 flames. Descent of the sun. He bounced his back and swung backwards, forming a thick layer of sparkling ice walls around him. It was as though he had been sealed in an indestructible coffin. Rumble. A blazing light flashed, almost blinding everyone's eyes. The terrifyingly high temperature melted the grass and soil at the core, heating up the buried steel pipes to a bright yellow color in an instant, softening and twisting them like freshly cooked noodles. The raging wind and rolling flames plowed through the ground, digging a huge hole. Lu Cheng's ice wall melted a lot, and then countless cracks appeared on it. Soon, it fell apart. At this moment, he had already avoided the most severe injuries. He was like a seagull that struggled and soared in the midst of the violent winds and enormous waves. After Wang Ke dodged the attack with transient steps, he retreated at high speed and pulled a distance of more than 10 meters. When the sun descended and the mushroom cloud rose, he was no longer in the most dangerous area. The shockwave swept over the flames. Wang Ke didn't try to take it head-on. Instead, he released an immeasurable amount of light around him and flew backward like a kite, dissipating most of the force. As he flew backward, his eyes were half closed. It was as though a vertical eye had grown in the lake in his heart. Through the air currents and dust, he saw Lu Cheng, who was soaring in the flames and waves. His left hand suddenly reached forward as though he was holding an invisible divine bow bestowed by the heavens. His right hand grabbed the bowstring and pulled it back. In an instant, the divine bow was like a full moon. The immeasurable amount of light around Wang Ke shrunk and condensed between his right thumb and index finger, forming a brilliant, pure, and blinding arrow of light. The 8th move of the light sect, vertical convergence, sun-shooting ray. With a whoosh, Wang Ke released his right thumb and index finger. The pure ray penetrated the layers of wind and waves, heading straight for the faraway Lu Cheng. It reached him in an instant. Bam! After the arrow was released, Wang Kei's body became heavy. He stomped heavily on the ground, creating an explosion-like crater. Using this force, he rebounded, knocked away the aftershocks, and headed straight for Lu Cheng. Lu Cheng, who was still struggling in the wind and flames, felt his scalp go numb. A strong sense of danger surged in his heart. Not good. He directly detonated a portion of the fire force in his body, causing his body to strangely change direction without any support, flashing to an angle. With a flash of light, it brushed past him and flew into the distance. When it landed on the ground, it didn't slow down in the slightest as it dug a ditch. At the end of the ditch, a shallow pit was blasted out. A piece of flesh was taken away from Lu Cheng's right rib, exposing his white bones. The pain didn't reach his brain for the time being. It was as if he had already gone numb. Bang! Wang Kei closed in on him and threw a punch at him, accompanied by a flash of light. Lu Cheng raised his arm to block and felt that his opponent's explosive strength was shocking. He was actually forced to take a step back. Bang bang bang. Wang Kei attacked continuously. Every punch and kick was accompanied by a flash of light, making it difficult for the enemy to see and increasing his own explosive power. This was a secret technique that he had prepared when he was charging over. The fourth move of the Donghuang Golden Sutra, Sudden Burst. Lu Cheng couldn't see anything. Relying on the reflection of the all-seeing God, he constantly shook his arms, punched, raised his knees, and kicked. He blocked his opponent's crazy attacks with precision as if he had measured them with a ruler. In the first few moves, he was forced to take a few steps back. Seeing that he was about to expose an opening, he had no choice but to circulate his qi and blood to stimulate his body. He used the simplified fighting formula to expand his muscles and explode, to barely turn the situation around. Bang! 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 Their fists landed on flesh, and their legs collided. Sand and pebbles flew, flames danced, and light scattered in all directions. White ripples formed in the shape of ripples spread out. Lu Cheng felt that Wang Kei's attacks were like a vast and mighty sea. They were vast and boundless, suppressing him firmly. There wasn't any space for him to change his moves or dodge. This was the power of the upright. He clenched his teeth and activated the simplified fighting formula. Relying on his body that could withstand more attacks after attaining physical invulnerability, he was like a small fishing boat in a storm, struggling to maintain its balance but about to capsize at any moment. During this process, Lu Cheng vigilantly realized that other than his mental state, his other attributes were slowly deteriorating. It wasn't because of exhaustion, but because of another reason. Suddenly, the content that he had read in the past 2 days flashed across his mind. Light has radiation. This is the foundation of the fusion of the Light sect and the Plague sect's incomplete chapters. Under the effects of radiation, the opponent gets weaker and weaker. Lu Cheng knew that he couldn't continue like this, but he couldn't find a chance to turn the tables. Wang Kei's punches and kicks didn't have profound changes. They were just fast, tightly connected, and just right. Together with the sudden burst of light, they formed an inescapable net that couldn't be shaken off. There wasn't any time for him to breathe. Being ordinary is the most deadly. Is this the potential of a master? Lu Cheng's heart was cold as he maintained his calm. He knew that the only thing he could do now was to hold on and wait. Wang Kei's sudden burst of light couldn't last forever. Bam! 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 Another dozen moves passed. Lu Cheng had no choice but to simplify the fighting formula and alternate it with normal attacks. He alternated between taking the blow head-on and retreating. The weakness in his body gradually became apparent. At this moment, Wang Kei's attacks showed signs of slowing down. The continuous burst of light wasn't accompanied by it. The terrifying sudden burst of light had finally reached its limit. Wang Kei slid his feet and dodged away from the front. He pushed his right palm and spread his 5 fingers. He struck out a burst of light that resembled Hadouken to connect the consecutive moves. Now's the time. Lu Cheng's willpower exploded. He gathered his chi and blood and outlined the fighting formula. While the weakness in his body was mostly neutralized by force concentration, he swelled up and turned into a giant with dark green skin. Then, ignoring his injuries, he lowered his shoulders and slammed violently to the side. Bam! He smashed through the burst of light and hit Wang Kei's crossed arms, creating an explosion of air. The impact caused his opponent to lose his horse stance and stagger backwards. As he staggered, the image of Lu Qing suppressing Xian Xiaoye with consecutive outbursts appeared in Wang Kei's mind. He knew that he had to dodge to avoid being in danger. He took a deep breath and turned his back. His body spun crazily on the spot like a roly-poly toy, making it hard to tell where he was going to be thrown. But at this moment, he saw that Lu Qing didn't chase after him. Instead, he stood on the spot and raised his hands expressionlessly to form a seal. Formation. A low and oppressive voice reverberated, evoking the mystery and guiding the environment. The layers of air around Wang Kei became solid and turned into steel plates, imprisoning him in a prison cell. This was the formation formula that Lu Qing had never used before in front of the public ever since he self-learned it. Wang Kei's body froze and was stuck there. Lu Qing seized the opportunity and bent his back, causing the dark universe to appear around him. Specks of fire condensed and turned into stars, embellishing the boundless coldness. Bam! He straightened his back and took a step forward. He punched Wang Kei, who was trapped in the formation formula. Fundamental unique skill, Cosmic Phantom. The hair on Wang Kei's back stood on end. Rays of light bloomed all over his body as though they were going to illuminate the surroundings. Just as the light pierced through the prison cell, it was shrouded in darkness. A crystalline layer of ice formed around Wang Kei and on the surface of his body. Following that, suns after suns were attracted and flew over. They were densely packed and came one after another. It was like a mutated version of 9 rotations of 5 flames. Descent of the sun. Seeing this, Wang Kei clenched his teeth and visualized to protect his vitals. Taking advantage of the moment when the ice layer restraining him broke, he took a step forward towards the suns. Boom! 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 Amidst the explosion, light and shadow distorted. His body suddenly disappeared and appeared on the other side of Lu Qing. His hair was messy, his clothes were torn, and he was covered in wounds. His eyes showed obvious fatigue. Light sex 5th style, transient steps. With Wang Kei's current ability, he could only use it 3 times at most without rest and adjustment. Boom! Rumble. The sound exploded and ignited the stars around, creating a storm that was comparable to the arrival of the sun earlier. Lu Qing's clothes fluttered in the wind. However, he didn't attack Wang Kei immediately. Instead, he raised his hands again, his expression calm and solemn. Wang Kei's eyes narrowed. He changed his footsteps and shifted his position, not giving Lu Qing a chance to restrain him again. Right at this moment, a deep and clear Lin word resounded in his ears. Wang Kei's body and mind seemed to be cleansed and became clear. Apart from that, fatigue was uncontrollable. It made his fighting spirit fade and his mind go blank. P.S. Updated on time, looking for monthly votes. Chapter 633. At this moment, Wang Kei only wanted to lie on the ground and enjoy the cool autumn breeze. He didn't want to care about the chaos and strife in the world anymore. Just as such a feeling surfaced, as an experienced mighty one, he already sensed that something was wrong. He forcefully shifted his attention to the wound caused by the explosion, magnifying the pain that he had deliberately endured. It made his mind feel as though it was being pricked by an awl, making him feel invigorated again. And because of this delay, Lu Qing had already taken a step forward. Using the wind as his footing, he raised his right hand and struck towards Wang Quebec. This strike was rather slow and wasn't completed yet. The surroundings were already dark, as though they were filled with gray clouds, brewing a snowstorm in the white sky. Wang Kei activated his Donghuang force and automatically pierced through his body, completely breaking free from the influence of the confrontation formula. Just as he was about to unleash his divine light to defend against the enemy's attack, he realized that Lu Cheng's strike wasn't aimed at him, but at the space between the two of them. Whoosh! A gust of cold wind blew over quickly, brushing past Wang Kei's face. It seeped into his body, causing his thoughts to freeze. After the control-type confrontation formula, Lu Cheng didn't follow it up with a killer move, but another control move. Ice Sex Fourth Style, cutting face like knives. This was the blueprint of Severe Warning's paternal lineage. Seeing that Wang Kei was frozen in place, Lu Cheng stepped on the ground with his left foot, twisted his back, and spread his right arm. He threw a punch forward. The heavy, blazing white on the surface changed with the wind and was instantly dyed with a faint purple color, which gradually deepened. With a boom, the leaden clouds dispersed and the heavens and earth were set ablaze. The crimson flames were like rain above, lava below, and waves in the middle. They clustered around Lu Cheng's fist and surged towards the statue-like enemy. As for Wang Kei, he was like a moth attracted by the purple flames. He couldn't help but lean forward, losing the opportunity to dodge. Fire Sex Third Style, Lord Emperor's Purple Flames. The high temperature burned his body and the purple color entered his eyes. Wang Kei finally woke up and regained his senses. Without thinking, he instinctively raised his arms to block and hurriedly activated his Donghuang force. Just as his body was about to glow, Lu Cheng's fist had already hit his cross-defensive stance. Boom! The purple flames exploded, creating a shockwave. Wang Kei's body swayed and his divine light dimmed. He took a few steps back and staggered. His front, back, left, right, and face were all burned. It was a shocking sight. The new vibrations in his body and the residual effects from before brought him the discomfort of vomiting blood. Clang! Lu Cheng's SSSSSS. He was going to use a big move to destroy a normal attack. In the previous battle, Wang Kei had used Burst of Light to suppress him, forcing him into a passive state and forcing him to use the simplified fighting formula to resist. Both Emperor Yen and Ice Spirit were neutralized by the Burst of Light due to their lack of physical invulnerability techniques. At this moment, he was giving Wang Kei a taste of his own medicine. The purple light in Wang Kei's eyes magnified as the fist approached him at high speed. Wang Kei, who had just stabilized his center of gravity, didn't show any signs of fear. He steadied his back and pushed his feet against the ground. While the ground around him was cracking rapidly, he shook his arms and swung his fists at the thousand-layer fire wave. Bam! His fist rubbed against the air, releasing a dazzling radiance that lit up the purplish-red sky. Boom! Fist against fist. The purple flames tore at the radiance. The radiance melted the purple flames. When the muscles caved in and the bones were slightly deformed, a white blast of air exploded. The crimson rain and magma were disintegrated and dimmed by the majestic divine light. Lu Cheng and Wang Kei both took a step back. They were evenly matched. All of a sudden, Lu Cheng had a deeper understanding of why Wang Kei was praised by Dong Baxian. This was something that couldn't be seen from watching the match highlights. He didn't know if it was because Wang Kei's light sex martial arts were pure and he was able to cut down on complexity and reduce time. Like Dong Baxian and the other top-notch figures, he increased the speed of his physical invulnerability moves and seized opportunities from passivity. Or was it because his punches and kicks were close to the power of physical invulnerability moves with normal force? The former was called lifting something heavy as if it were light, while the latter was turning something rotten into something magical. His master potential was indeed well-deserved. Perhaps he had solidified the 1-second reduction passive skill. Similar thoughts flooded his mind. Lu Cheng's ice heart was unmoved. He seized the opportunity while he still had the initiative. With a stomp, he activated his body movement. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A strong gust of wind was stirred up on the spot by Lu Cheng. He kept changing his position, throwing punches and kicks crazily. He was as fast as a machine gun, and every punch and kick was accompanied by dreamy cold light and white fog. Bam bam bam. He swung his punch backwards, borrowed the force to pull his leg back, and launched another attack. He was like a spinning top, getting faster and faster as he fought. Every time he clashed with Wang Ke, the coldness and stiffness in his opponent's body would increase. From his fist and arm, it penetrated through the Donghuang force's counteraction and spread throughout his entire body. Ice Sect's third move, Blizzard Storm. Its simplified version was called 24 Blizzard Strikes. Bam bam bam. Wang Ke's physical and vulnerability moves couldn't keep up with Lu Cheng's craziness and continuous attacks. He could only contend with his normal punches and kicks that contained the Donghuang force. Although they were equally strong and extraordinary, he was still completely suppressed and couldn't shake them off. Gradually, he felt his limbs stiffen and his body's movements become sluggish. At this moment, Lu Cheng had also reached his limit. He took the initiative to change. Abruptly, he stopped his movements and gathered his force concentration towards his lower abdomen. Seeing this, Wang Ke wanted to dodge. However, the stiffness of his body slowed his movements. He had no choice but to use force concentration to neutralize the negative effects. His chi and blood collapsed, darkness gathered, and stars appeared, occupying the mainstream of the universe. Lu Cheng had fully displayed the side effects of practicing 9 rotations of 5 flames. Descent of the Sun. This was the exact opposite of the Lament of the Ice Queen. Bam! His muscles swelled, and he swung his back. He threw a punch. The instant burst of light was as though he was practicing the golden scriptures of Donghuang. Boom! Wang Ke activated his Dan force in time and swung his forearm to block Lu Cheng's punch, creating an exaggerated explosion. Thump thump thump. He took a few steps back. Blood and flesh could be seen on his arm. There seemed to be cracks on his bones. He was at a disadvantage. Just as Lu Cheng pounced and closed in on him again, a glow appeared on the surface of Wang Ke's body. He took a step diagonally. With a flash of light, he disappeared from his original spot, leaving only an afterimage. This was the third time he had used transient steps. Lu Cheng quickly formed an ice wall, raised his arms, and blocked in front of him. Boom! At the same time Wang Ke's figure appeared, there was an explosion. The airflow was chaotic, and Lu Cheng's crystalline body shattered. He was forcefully pushed back a few steps. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Wang Ke released rays of divine light from inside out. His fatigue decreased significantly, and many of his wounds showed signs of healing at an accelerated rate. The 6th style of the light sect, Lofty Holy Light. This could affect the opponent's mental state, and at the same time, it could strengthen the user, squeeze out their potential, and heal injuries. Seeing this, Lu Cheng was momentarily annoyed. Seeing that it was too late to stop him, he could only circulate his chi and blood to stimulate his body. He quickly used the simplified wholeness formula to refresh his body. Wang Ke sensed the change in him and laughed out loud. Again. He had also fought with passion, no longer keeping a low profile as usual. Bam! 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 The two of them turned at high speeds, stirring up strong winds. They kept looking for opportunities, but to no avail. After a while, they clashed again. Lu Cheng's Dan force exploded. Using his body as a bow and his arm as a string, he shot out his fist at lightning speed. Just as Wang Ke raised his arm to block, he heard a muffled sound from his opponent's fist. Sparks bloomed, and the trajectory of the fist changed strangely. It went from a straight-up punch to a downward punch. Instead of passively defending, Wang Ke lowered his shoulder and leaned his body to the side, directly crashing into Lu Cheng. He avoided the third possible change in direction, and seized the opportunity to attack. Bam bam bam. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The two of them kept exchanging blows in the narrow space. Their close-range combat techniques were on full display. Sometimes it was raining fire, and sometimes it was shining brightly. During this process, the purity of Wang Ke's martial arts was maximized, causing Lu Cheng to slowly fall into a disadvantageous position. I can't continue like this. Otherwise, it'll be hard to turn back. A thought flashed through Lu Cheng's mind, and he changed his fighting style. As he struck with his fist, he formed a crimson fireball around him. It was as though he was accumulating energy to perform 9 rotations of 5 flames. Descend of the sun. Boom! Lu Cheng's fist landed on Wang Kei's arm. The crimson fireball around him didn't wait any longer. It descended rapidly and was ignited by the light shot out by his opponent. Air billowed, and the two of them retreated. Lu Cheng formed a blazing white fireball around him again. It grew bigger and bigger, like the sun. Bam! Wang Kei rushed over, turned his back halfway, and threw out a punch. It was as though he didn't want to give Lu Cheng the time to gather the 5 flames. Lu Cheng responded accordingly. Just as the two of their fists were about to meet, light suddenly gathered in Wang Kei's eyes and shot out. It brushed past the blazing white fireball and destroyed its balance. This was one of the methods he prepared to deal with 9 rotations of 5 flames. The reason why he didn't use it earlier was to not alert Lu Cheng and to trick him into expending more energy. Boom! The blazing white fireball exploded in mid-air, turning into drops of fire rain. Lu Cheng and Wang Kei's clothes fluttered as their fists collided. In what was supposed to be a simple exchange, Wang Kei felt an extremely cold force surge towards him. He saw ice crystals forming around him, isolating him. He was sealed in an ice coffin in an instant. Lu Cheng was using the 5 flames as bait to secretly use the lament of the Ice Queen. When the flame force was far away, wouldn't the body be left with only darkness and coldness? This was the overall meaning of the lament of the Ice Queen. Just as Wang Kei was hit by the move, Lu Cheng immediately changed his visualization and launched a frenzied attack. Every move was heavy, and every punch was filled with flames. Boom! 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 Wang Kei's punches and kicks were difficult. He was dizzy from the attacks and was in danger within a few seconds. Bam! Lu Cheng raised his arm high and threw a punch down, breaking Wang Kei's stance. He hit him so hard that he saw stars and his qi and blood were in turmoil. Bam! Lu Cheng threw another punch and stopped in front of Wang Kei's dazed eyes. The referee saw it from afar and shouted, "Lu Cheng wins." Chapter 634. The air that burned his respiratory tract gradually cooled down. Everything in front of him that was distorted by the high temperature returned to normal. Wang Kei's eyes regained their luster. He patted the dust off his clothes and stood up straight. He looked at Lu Cheng and said thoughtfully, "Ice and fire in one?" This sentence was sent via voice transmission to avoid being recorded by the camera. Lu Cheng knew that he couldn't hide the essence of that move from Wang Quebec. He nodded calmly and said, "Yes." Wang Kei seemed to have solved a difficult problem. His body and mind felt more relaxed. He heaved a sigh of relief and turned to leave. At this moment, a thought flashed across Lu Cheng's mind. He blurted out, "Can you use transient steps continuously?" Since they were all talking via voice transmission, this question was no exception. Lu Cheng regretted it the moment the words left his mouth. This involved the trump card of a martial artist. It wasn't something others should ask. Wang Kei stopped in his tracks. After thinking for a few seconds, he smiled and said, "Yes." With that, he didn't stay any longer. He walked along the path full of potholes and flames towards the exit he came from. His back was straight, and he looked neither humble nor arrogant under the spotlight. "Yes?" Lu Cheng nodded slowly. While enjoying the cheers, he had some other thoughts in his mind. If that's the case, the best use of transient steps shouldn't be for dodging, but for attacking. Lu Cheng raised his hands high and clapped his hands to show his respect. He walked further and further on the path of light until he disappeared at the edge of the arena. During this process, he only felt the sense of weakness appear again. Combined with the exhaustion of his body, it made him very tired. His footsteps were weak, as though he was seriously ill. Of course, having been seriously injured for a long time, he was very used to it. He walked steadily without any difficulty. When he returned to the locker room, he first took the phone from Alman and sent a message to Yenjika. Snickering emoji, I won. In the morning in Connecticut, Yenjika, who was listening to her tutor's lecture seriously, felt her pocket vibrate. She looked around silently, reached into her pocket, and pulled out her phone. Before the light went out, she took a quick glance. Her lips curled into a beautiful arc. She stuffed her phone back into her pocket and held the side of her face. Her silky black hair fell through the gaps between her fingers. She became more focused and excited as she continued to listen to the lecture. In the live broadcast room, the host looked at the heavyweight commentator beside him, cleared his throat, and said in a rather restrained manner, "This is truly an exciting battle. Senior Wuguang, what do you think?" Taoist Wuguang, whose hair was a mix of silver and black, gave a gentle smile. Indeed. His appearance was ordinary, and he belonged to the kind of old man that could be seen everywhere. Those who had never seen him before would always feel that this person was familiar when they first saw him. The host was almost choked by this concise and comprehensive answer. He could only take the initiative to lead the conversation. He smiled and said, "Senior Wuguang, I didn't expect you to be a guest. It's rare for you to be so free. Did you get a bye this round?" You didn't participate in the first round either? Did you only find out today?" Taoist Wuguang shook his head with a smile. "I didn't manage to register." His smile was light and carefree, as if he was used to such things. "Why?" the host blurted out in surprise. "During the registration, our Sex Foreign Affairs Division forgot about me. The organizing committee felt that I would definitely participate, so they didn't verify it," said Taoist Wuguang helplessly and amusedly. Because of this, he had agreed to be a guest commentator, thinking that since he was already here, he might as well take things as they came. "You are the sect leader." The host wanted to reply, but when the words reached his mouth, he forcefully swallowed them back down. Instead, he smiled and said, "Senior Wuguang, can you give a brief comment on the match just now?" Taoist Wuguang pondered for a moment. Lu Cheng and Wang Ke both performed at an extremely high level. Both are among the best of the younger generation. Lu Cheng's victory was partly due to the lack of fights between physical and vulnerability experts, so Wang Ke didn't fully understand him. There was always the element of surprise. However, this is part of a martial arts battle. Fortunately, this is modern times, and it's a challenge tournament. If this were 100 or 200 years ago, or even 1,000 or 2,000 years ago, the secret trump card would be the key to a martial artist's victory. Many strong martial artists couldn't stand up again after a moment of carelessness or carelessness. Physical and vulnerability experts still have a chance to regret. As for those below, Wuguang shook his head and continued. "Here, I have to criticize Wang Quebec. He knew that Lu Cheng had many tricks up his sleeve, but he didn't take sufficient precautions despite not knowing his opponent well. This is a little careless. This habit isn't a big deal in a challenge tournament, but in a real battle, it's dangerous." Wang Ke probably didn't expect Lu Cheng to have so many tricks up his sleeve, and even have something new in the end. The host helped to explain. Then, he asked curiously, "Senior Wuguang, I can see that Wang Ke is strong, but where do you see something as intangible as master potential?" Instead of arguing, Taoist Wuguang explained seriously, "That's right." He explained seriously, when everyone is practicing the same martial arts, and you have a deeper and purer grasp of it than everyone else, your performance is more powerful, simpler, faster, and more powerful. That's master potential. What the hell is he talking about? It's too abstract and not intuitive at all, the host thought. After thinking for a few seconds, he smiled and asked, "Then what do you think of Lu Cheng?" Taoist Wuguang answered with great interest, "From this battle, we can see that his ice and fire powers weren't forcefully mixed together. Instead, they formed a harmonious whole. From the small details to the big details, it's all the same. When the fire is on the outside, the ice is on the inside." Wang Ke didn't realize this point and separated the ice and fire powers. This is consistent with Lu Cheng's explanation in the previous interview. I believe that he has indeed taken a different path from his predecessors, a path that is new to everyone's eyes. His fighting style is close to that of a martial artist, but there are also some similarities. If we try to trick him with old tricks and don't recognize this point clearly, there will be people who are stronger than him who will lose because of this. Glory aside, this is the performance of a grandmaster in terms of martial arts. When Lu Cheng perfects this path and creates his own set of martial arts, he will be able to spread it. That will really be the start of a new sect, the first of its kind. The first of its kind. Just these two words are enough to show great spirit. The host exclaimed. Under the latest news on Yanzhao League's official Weibo, the number of comments increased again. One fan after another expressed their feelings after witnessing the battle. Amazing, truly amazing. Air K is being silly again. I heard, the sect leader of Shangqing sect say that Air K was being silly for once. You can't say that. Lu Cheng is indeed strong. He deserves his reputation as the heavenly son of the age. Sigh, I finally understand what it means to live up to your reputation. From the looks of it, even if there are various reasons for Lu Cheng's victory, he is still a second pin fighter, or at least close to it. It's only been 3 months since he broke through. I heard the sect leader of Shangqing sect say that Lu Cheng really has the potential to become a grandmaster. Yan Shaoling replied to the forum as she read the comments of her opponents. She felt an indescribable sense of satisfaction. She hurriedly scrolled from Yanzhao League's official Weibo, Yanzhao League's forum, Wang Kei's Weibo, Wang Kei's forum to Weiwei Club, Shangqing sect, and other unrelated places. She eagerly read every word. When she finally calmed down, she felt more tired than fighting a match. Most of Lu Cheng's fans on the forum were doing the same. In the changing room, Wang Kei didn't leave immediately. After treating his injuries, he replayed his battle with Lu Cheng over and over again. He would pause from time to time and fall into deep thought. His battle style is more similar to Wisdom King's, many control methods, very good coordination in all aspects. After some time, Wang Kei, who was sitting cross-legged on the sofa, suddenly stood up as though he couldn't wait to practice something. After returning to the hotel, the exhausted Lu Cheng said goodbye to Yan Zhike and fell into a deep sleep. Amen saw that she had nothing to do and entered the room diagonally opposite. Coincidentally, she saw Guojie's assistant, Wang Yueshi, coming out of the shower. Seeing Amen, Wang Yueshi was stunned. She smiled and gave a thumbs up. Your boss is really awesome. He's alright, replied Amen with a smile. She finally understood what it meant to be proud of someone. In the second round of the competition, Lu Cheng was matched against a surviving inhuman stage fighter and passed with ease. Peng Liyun, on the other hand, was matched against the witch, Qian Hui. Due to carelessness, he suffered his first defeat after reaching the physical invulnerability stage. Fortunately, he wasn't eliminated yet. Renli finally met an opponent of sufficient strength and won with difficulty. At this moment, there were still 65 mighty ones left. All the Inhumans had been eliminated. The fourth round of drawing lots was about to be announced. While chatting leisurely with Ku, Lu Cheng was also paying attention to the results. Before he could mentally prepare himself, he heard his name being announced. Lu Cheng shifted his gaze to the TV screen and waited for the results to be announced. The guest opened the paper and announced with a smile, Daxing Temple, Living Buddha, Shirshan. Chapter 635. Living Buddha Shirshan. Lu Cheng, who was leaning on the pillow, was stunned for a second. Then, he sat up straight and his eyes lit up. He felt like he was dreaming again. Unlike the mummy, Dark Knight Bat, Xian Xiaoya, Wang Kei, and the other physical invulnerability mighty ones he had fought before, he had heard of the name, Living Buddha, for a long time. In fact, he had been practicing martial arts for a long time. Shirshan of this generation had already made the great leap when he was in his 3rd year of high school. He was known as the youngest physical invulnerability mighty ones and the heavenly son of heaven. He had heard of him for a long time. Now that he had met him, how could he not be excited? To Lu Cheng, at this moment and in this situation, he had a deeper understanding of himself as a physical invulnerability expert. The things that he could only fantasize about in his bed during his adolescence were coming true, step by step. Such an experience was so wonderful. While thinking, Lu Cheng lowered his head and typed on the keyboard. He sent the result of the draw to Yen Jika, Living Buddha. Following that, he added a comment with a red bandana over his head emoji. Looking forward to it. He was looking forward to experiencing this great monk's marvelous skills and techniques. He was looking forward to sparring with the person he had yearned for in the past. Yen Jika was taking a short break between classes. Just as she was about to take the time to browse Lu Cheng's fan forum, she saw 2 consecutive messages from her husband. Living Buddha. Her dark eyes lit up. The feelings in her heart were very similar to Lu Cheng's. Before she could differentiate her emotions, she saw the word, looking forward to it. She couldn't help but curve her eyes and curl her lips. She deliberately said, "What are you looking forward to?" The great monk is a true first pin mighty one. After making the great leap, the living Buddhas of the past would indeed slow down their progress. However, with the wisdom of past eras and unique martial arts, it was still easy for them to reach second pin. Now that 5 years had passed, with his accumulation, it was normal for him to reach first pin. Lu Cheng didn't mind at all and said, "Winning and losing is a common thing for martial artists. This was an experiential journey." "Yo, you have a good attitude." Covering mouth and laughing expression, Yen Jika said, "Who's the one who's always sulking after losing a match?" Lu Cheng couldn't help but laugh. He replied in a self-deprecating tone, "That's all to create an opportunity to be comforted by you." Yen Jika turned her eyes and pursed her lips. She turned her head and looked to the side with a smile on her face. At this moment, she saw her mentor slowly walking in. She hurriedly typed a message, "It's time for class. When I get back tonight, I'll discuss the Living Buddha's techniques with you. I'm waiting for Coach Yen," replied Lu Cheng. He put away his phone and sat cross-legged for a few seconds. He didn't even pay attention to the results of Peng Liyun and Ren Li's draw, nor did he discuss it in the group chat. He seriously pondered the various rumors about the Living Buddha. Daxing Temple was first established based on the Great Light Scripture of Buddha. Later on, it merged with several branches of Tantric Buddhism, which led to the formation of the 2 supreme arts, womb storage and Vajra. More than 100 years ago, when the world was in chaos, Daxing Temple took advantage of the decline of the Living Buddha sect and swallowed up the largest Tantric sect. Not only did they complete the 2 supreme arts of womb storage and Vajra, but they also filled in the forbidden areas of the Great Light Scripture of Buddha, leaping to the forefront of the top forces. This incident happened not long ago. Many senior physical invulnerability experts still remembered it clearly. Hence, Daxing Temple didn't want to use the reincarnation of the Living Buddha as a front. Instead, they went around and said they were taking him in. Generations of living Buddhas were all able to manifest the image of Vairocana. They were born with thought steel and could master the 6-syllable Sanskrit within a month. Also, the Bodhi mantra of the womb storage was a supreme art unique to the Living Buddha. Even Wisdom King Ji Hai couldn't master it. At most, he could only scratch the surface. In battle, the Living Buddha was known for his strong mental strength. When he attacked, it was hard to tell if it was real or not. Jiu Chu City, Taining Road, at a roadside barbecue stall. The tall and fat Living Buddha, Shi Shan, was squatting on a small folding stool. He looked anxiously at the stall owner as he sprinkled cumin over and over again. He was wearing a gray woolen hat and a black t-shirt, which hid his features as a monk. "All right, here's your barbecue." The stall owner walked over with a metal plate and a huge pile of food. Pork ribs, fat intestines, chicken skin, beef, mutton. Shi Shan sized up the food and said with certainty, "Did you get the wrong food?" "Got the wrong food?" The stall owner muttered softly. He returned to the barbecue grill and picked up the menu from the table. As he walked around Shi Shan, he flipped through the menu. 20 skewers of green beans, 20 skewers of small potatoes, 20 skewers of eggplant, 20 skewers of steamed buns. The stall owner read aloud. He looked at Sher Shan and asked in surprise, "You're a vegetarian? Is that strange?" Sher Shan smiled and asked in return, "Your figure." The stall owner paused and said, "You really don't look like one." Sher Shan sighed and said with a smile, "In the past, when I saw those fat and strong abbot masters, I always suspected that they had broken their precepts in private and were not good monks. When I grew up, I realized that some people can get fat from eating vegetarian food." The stall owner was speechless for a moment. He decided to just send over a bowl of clear soup. "Big brother, don't think about that. Come and try this white pepper clear soup. It'll be officially sold in a few days." Smelling the fragrance, Sher Shan took the bowl and gulped it down. "SSS, hot, slow down, slow down." The stall owner was shocked. Sher Shan finished it in a few mouthfuls and wiped his mouth. "The taste of pepper is very strong and fragrant." Not bad, not bad, he seemed to have an appetite. He picked up the skewers and wolfed them down. Just as he was eating happily, he suddenly heard the table behind him excitedly discussing the master battle. "Lu Qing just drew the living Buddha. That's amazing. It's the outer heavenly sun versus the heavenly sun of the age. It's common knowledge that there are 5 of the 4 heavenly kings. What's there to talk about? The living Buddha is a first pin. I'm afraid Lu Qing is going to lose." Sher Shan slowed down his chewing motion and muttered with interest, "What's the matter? Lu Qing?" He pondered for a few seconds and once again immersed himself in the whirlwind sweeping away the clouds. "I can't let tonight's supper be delayed because of the battle the day after tomorrow." When the living Buddha snuck out to enjoy the Jiu Chu barbecue, the internet was already abuzz. Headlines such as "Battle of the Heavenly Suns" and "Prelude to an Era" could be seen everywhere. The poison milk hierarch, He Xiaowei, looked at all of this happily and felt deeply satisfied. He was the one who came up with the idea of the 4 heavenly suns and gradually spread it. It was recognized and became a gimmick. Cough, do you still remember how I evaluated the heavenly suns? I didn't expect Lu Qing to meet the living Buddha in just a few years. He Xiaowei pondered for a few minutes before posting on Weibo. He was expecting to be praised, but the replies he saw had nothing to do with it. Disappointing. You didn't predict who would win or lose. Poison milk hierarch, are you too arrogant? Or are we fans too weak to lift a knife? If you have the guts, then guess that Lu Qing would lose. To the one above, are you a fan of Lu Qing? He Xiaowei's eyelids twitched. He picked up the teacup and took a sip. You want to provoke me to predict Lu Qing's match? No way. I cherish my eyebrows and hair. Living Buddha. Brahman, who had her signature twin ponytails, was excited. She sat up, put the light and thin laptop on her lap, and started to browse the forum crazily. She was busy discussing with others and reading predictions. At this moment, her phone rang. It was a message from her boyfriend. "Tong Tong, you look so good in that dress today." Brahman picked up the phone, glanced at it, and quickly replied with a few words. "I'm busy. Talk to you later." After clicking send, she looked at the screen again, focused and serious. In the dormitory of Songqing University, Yan Xiaoling was complaining to He Zi with a gloomy expression. "Anyway, my old uncle is a weirdo. And my dad, now that he has a new home, he can't wait for me to move there. Who would have thought that Lingling's silly and cheerful appearance hid so many sad memories?" He Zi was surprised. She couldn't help but feel pity for her and wanted to comfort her best friend. At this moment, Yan Xiaoling glanced at her phone casually and jumped up. She shouted, "Living Buddha!" She turned around abruptly and rushed to the computer table. She opened her laptop and browsed the forum on her phone. Sometimes she was nervous, sometimes she was excited, sometimes she was laughing, and sometimes she was excited. He Zi looked at her in a daze and silently swallowed back the words she wanted to say. After a day, the fourth round of the double elimination competition of the Master Battle began. The battle between Lu Cheng and Living Buddha Sher Shan was scheduled for the last match in the afternoon. It would start between 5 p.m. and 5:30 p.m., depending on the length of the previous matches. It was still the familiar Jiangxin Island, with the same ships and drones. Yan Zhika, who had woken up early, covered her mouth with her hand and yawned. She pulled the pillow beside her over and stuffed it behind her back. It's not as comfortable as Cheng's body. Yan Zhika suddenly recalled their daily interactions when she was watching battle videos and watching TV series. She released her right hand, bit her lower lip, and sighed. At this moment, she saw Lu Cheng and Sher Shan coming over in separate boats. She quickly collected her thoughts and pursed her lips. The two stood at the bow of their boats. Although the river was swaying, their bodies didn't sway at all. It felt like a battle between ancient martial artists. Stepping onto the shore, Lu Cheng approached the referee and saw Sher Shan, who was wearing a yellow monk robe. This living Buddha had a big head and a thick neck. He looked like a certain singer. If he wore a wig and tied his hair into a ponytail, the audience would think that if he shouted, "The great river flows to the east," would definitely come out. Sher Shan smiled and put his palms together in greeting. When Lu Cheng returned the greeting, the referee looked at his watch and the many drones hovering in the sky. He raised his right arm and said, "Talk time starts now." Just as Lu Cheng was about to form the 5 flames, something changed in front of him. He saw the desolated Jiangxin Island, with vegetation growing and Bodhi trees growing. Colored glass, gold, and agate were mixed among them. They emitted waves of Buddhist light, solemn and sacred. The fat monk opposite him was glowing with golden light. He sat cross-legged on a lotus platform. Around him were phantoms of wisdom King Vajra, Bodhisattva, and celestial dragon. He looked like a Buddha descending to earth. His natural smile disappeared. His eyes became cold and indifferent, as though he had seen through the changes of the human world and the vicissitudes of time. At this moment, Lu Cheng couldn't tell if this was an illusion or reality. P.S. Actually, I just changed my ID today. I went early, so there weren't many people. It took less than 40 minutes, less than the time I took to go back and forth and get stuck in traffic. However, the temperature is dropping these few days, so I miserably brought the wrong clothes. They were all short-sleeved. Chapter 636. The sky seemed to be shrouded in glass, sprinkling a faint golden glow. Living Buddha Sher Shan sat on top of the lotus platform, quietly looking down at Lu Cheng without any intention of speaking. Instead, the illusory figures of bodhisattvas and wisdom kings surrounding him moved their lips, chanting scriptures. Their chanting was muffled, just like what visitors would hear during morning and evening classes in the temple. Ethereal and solemn chants reverberated. Lotuses bloomed one after another, emerging from the mud but not tainted. They were pure and clear but not demonic. They had transcended the mortal world and were detached from the secular world. Lu Cheng wasn't fooled by such a strange scene. The ice lake was still, without ripples. In his perception, within a radius of 5 meters with himself as the center, there was no lotus or bodhi. There was only the light of a pale glaze that was gentle and faintly discernible. However, as long as this boundary was exceeded, the Pure Land would descend and the Buddhist kingdom would appear. The living Buddha's spirit has reduced the effect of my enemy heart freezing move and the size of my territory to this extent. Lu Cheng's expression was solemn. His thoughts raced as he considered his current situation. It was said that the succession of the living Buddhas involved the inheritance of spirit. It was similar to the possibility that the descendants of physical invulnerability experts might be born with supernatural abilities. There was a theoretical explanation for the latter. Just like how words and symbols could express the meaning of one's predecessors, the composition of one's genes could also express the information left behind by one's predecessors. This was a memory rooted in one's body. From this perspective, the living Buddha seemed to be traceable as well. However, the current research on spirit was still lagging behind. Everything was just speculation and unproven. It was said that the military had been trying all sorts of methods to get Daxing Temple to release the secret art of reincarnation of the living Buddha. Unfortunately, they had never succeeded. A living Buddha who had undergone empowerment was born with a strong spirit. When he cultivated the womb realm and Vajra realm, it was as though he had already mastered it in his previous life. However, he was unfamiliar with it now. Once he was slightly familiar with it, he could immediately get the hang of it. It was no wonder that some seniors had speculated that the selection of a living Buddha reincarnated spirit child had the most basic requirement, which was to be gifted and able to withstand the empowerment. Such a child would only appear once every 20 to 30 years. If it wasn't discovered in time, one could only choose a disciple with good potential to inherit the title of living Buddha. When he had mastered the secret art, he would find a spirit child to perform empowerment. This was also the reason why the living Buddha lineage was at a low point. Back then, Daxing Temple took advantage of the chaos in the world where spirit children were hard to find. And Tantra, the largest lineage of Tantric Buddhism for 2 generations, to find an opportunity to swallow them. While his thoughts were running wild, Lu Qing calmly formed red, light blue, golden, light purple, and blazing white fireballs. He let them circle around his body and dance. As soon as the 5 flames were formed, the Buddhist kingdom suddenly darkened. The night sky suddenly turned upside down and sprinkled on the earth, embellishing the pitch-black curtain. However, this didn't dilute the pure land. Instead, it made it more dreamy and sacred. The living Buddha lives up to his name. In the live broadcast studio, although the scene the host saw wasn't as realistic as Lu Cheng's, he could vaguely see scenes described in various Buddhist scriptures. Beside him, the old Taoist with a bun nodded in agreement. More than half of the living Buddha's abilities lie in his spirit. At this moment, the referee standing at the edge of River Heart Island raised his right hand and announced, "Begin." Along with this sentence, the chanting of scriptures in Lu Cheng's ears grew louder and clearer. It calmed his mind and body, making it difficult to summon his fighting spirit. Controlling his body became several times more difficult. What was even more frightening was that he seemed to have entered the slow motion of a movie. Everything around him slowed down, frame by frame, like a dream. In the distance, the golden body living Buddha sitting on the lotus platform suddenly appeared in front of him. He solemnly raised his right hand and pressed it down from above. The palm's 5 fingers were spread open and shone brightly, covering the sky and sealing off all gaps. It made the area Lu Cheng was in seem independent, making it impossible for him to dodge or escape. Such a scene made Lu Cheng feel as though he had stepped into a Buddhist scripture. He felt as though the exaggerated myths and legends were really happening around him. If he hadn't read the notes of the battle between the physical invulnerability experts of the Longhu Club and the living Buddha, Lu Cheng would have thought that his opponent's divine arts had disrupted time and cut out an independent space like a cage. But now, he was very clear that the inconceivable mysteries of this palm came mainly from the suppression and influence of the mind. It was hard to distinguish between what was real and what was fake. Bodhi Mantra. This was a unique skill of the womb realm that could only be mastered by the living Buddha, who had a strong mind and unique characteristics, through empowerment. At this moment, what the audience and the live audience saw was different from what Lu Cheng saw. In their eyes, the living Buddha Shu Shan was merely stepping on the pale golden Buddha's light. In the scene of it blooming like a lotus, he approached his opponent in one step, raised his right hand, and pressed it down slowly and heavily, as though he was going to press his opponent into the ground and seal him. Facing the huge golden Buddha palm that couldn't be avoided or resisted, Lu Cheng suddenly gave up on the enemy heart-freezing move. He took the initiative to draw the fighting formula that was full of battle intent and unyielding. His chi and blood boiled, and the feeling of depression and sluggishness were swept away. Lu Cheng bent his back, retracted his force, and balanced his dantian. This time, he didn't move the stars to complete the fighting formula. He merely grasped the charm. Bam! His dantian chi exploded, and his fist blasted upwards like a launched rocket. He straightened his body, as though he was going to soar into the clouds and break through the heavenly palace. Even if his palm covered the heavens and earth, even if the Buddha's will couldn't withstand it, even if the path ahead was hopeless, he would force his way through. Never give up, fight heaven and earth. Under this will an aura that connected the inside and outside, the huge golden Buddha palm in Lu Cheng's eyes shrank rapidly. It no longer covered the heavens, but became traceable and returned to the mortal world. Boom! Lu Cheng's fist rose like a real dragon and collided with the pure and untainted Buddha palm. Golden light burst out from the impact, and the other party's arm rebounded and leaned back. At the same time, his thoughts flashed. He wanted to gather the crimson, golden, light blue, blazing white, and faint purple swirls behind him and smash them out as one. He wanted to use the 9 rotations of 5 flames. Descend of the sun to break the living Buddha's spiritual territory. However, just as he thought of this, the clear and restored Shi Shan's figure in front of him suddenly pulled away. He moved from 2 meters away to the peak of Mount Meru in an instant. He fell back onto the lotus platform, and the distance between him and Shi Shan turned into a faraway place. Lu Cheng recovered his enemy heart-freezing move, but he could only sense the situation within 5 meters. Beyond this distance, he wouldn't be able to tell if the living Buddha in front of him was real or fake. If he blindly used 9 rotations of 5 flames, descend of the sun, he would only exhaust himself for nothing, and it would be a huge drain. Just as he thought of this, the rapidly circling crimson, faint purple, and other fireballs slowed down and continued to revolve without any difficulty. It wasn't until this moment that Lu Cheng's mind flashed back to his earlier encounter, and he gained some understanding. Thought steal? The living Buddha used thought steal to hear his thoughts in advance and avoided them as if he had foreseen it. This is really a bug-level ability. Daxing Temple's Womb Realm Division's thought steal was equally difficult to master. Most of the time, the disciples could only scratch the surface. Even Wisdom King, Zhi Hai, had only reached the level where he could sense the true emotions of others and detect clues. In the current world, other than the living Buddha, Shi Shan, only the abbot of Daxing Temple, divine monk Fa Yuan, who had practiced silent meditation for decades, could truly master it. In the live broadcast room, the host watched as Lu Cheng and Shi Shan separated after a brief exchange of blows. The former's 5 flames, which had been ready to be unleashed, calmed down, while the latter pulled a distance of 20 to 30 meters within a second. The living Buddha avoided descent of the sun in advance? Following which, he answered his own question, thought steal is really mysterious. Furthermore, Lu Cheng's control of the 5 flames is as light as a feather. I've only seen it on the Dragon King. To be able to forcefully retract and rebalance when he's about to release it, that's no simple feat. As the host rambled on, the silver-haired old Taoist beside him tried to open his mouth a few times but couldn't find a chance to interrupt. Being very polite, he didn't want to interrupt the host and could only quietly play the part of the background. After a short exchange, both Lu Cheng and the living Buddha, Shi Shan, had a more direct impression of each other's style, strength, and standards. At this moment, the living Buddha didn't approach. Instead, he continued to sit cross-legged on the lotus platform at the peak of empty Meru. His hands formed a seal and his lips opened and closed. Om. Ma. Ni. Ba. Mi. Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. The 6-syllable Sanskrit mantra was fully executed. P.S. I have to travel in the afternoon. That night watch should be before midnight. Begging for a guaranteed monthly ticket at the beginning of the month. Chapter 637. Wang Mani Padme Hum. Wang Mani Padme Hum. Living Buddha Shi Shan chanted faster and faster. The glazed golden light around him grew brighter and brighter. It was as though something between heaven and earth was being triggered by the 6 syllables, glowing in layers. Lu Cheng could only hear the buzzing of the incantation in his ears. An obvious emptiness appeared in his head and his body gradually lost strength. Every bone, every joint, and every muscle seemed to have been sealed. They were all slowly being tightened. His spine bent bit by bit and his back arched. It was as though he was bearing the weight of several mountains. Movement was so difficult that even standing seemed like a luxury, not to mention controlling the faint purple and golden fireballs around him. The 6 syllables of Sanskrit had the ability to suppress and seal. It was known as the supreme technique left behind by Buddha in the past. Seeing that the 5 flames were about to disintegrate, Lu Qing couldn't care less. While the suppression was still light, he turned his back, clenched his fist, and punched forward. Golden, faint purple, and light blue colors gathered and followed the wind of the punch, smashing into the ground. An extremely bright, blazing white light exploded, instantly illuminating the surrounding pure land of Buddha's light, shattering it into pieces as though it was being swallowed. Rumble. The loud noise shook the entire Jiangxin island, dispersing the chanting of Wang Mani Padme Hum. At this deafening moment, Lu Qing felt an unprecedented sense of peace. His mind was no longer blank and the shackles on his body were being unlocked one by one. He was breaking technique with brute force. He was breaking the secret technique of Buddha with the power of reality. At this moment, the spectators on the ship saw living Buddha Sher Shan, who wasn't far from Lu Qing and had escaped the most violent effect of the 9 rotations of 5 flames, taking a step forward. Going against the wind and waves, he approached his enemy. Around him, the Buddha's light exploded. It was bright and pure, forming an apparition of Vairocana that was a few meters tall. It was an apparition that was almost real and had fused with the actual body. This Buddha's face was full of compassion and compassion. He extended his huge right palm and pressed it towards Lu Qing as though he was swatting a fly. It was the Vairocana body, the fundamental technique shared by the Great Light Scripture, Womb Realm, and Vajra Realm. At this very moment, Lu Qing had just broken free from the light and sound of the 9 rotations of 5 flames. He turned around amidst the wind, waves, and flames. Suddenly, he saw that the entire sky was occupied by a golden Buddha, and it was still expanding rapidly. In that instant, Lu Qing felt as if the earth he was on had become a precious jewel in front of the golden Buddha, not to mention himself, who was so small compared to the earth. Immediately after, the Mahavairakana, who was full of majestic appearances, stretched out his palm and pressed down. Lu Qing took a deep breath. He still hugged ice and fire to his lower abdomen and moved the stars to form the fighting formula. Bang! The air around him exploded, and he also became huge. His muscles were bulging, and his skin was greenish-black. Every part of his body was filled with explosive power. Kacha! Lu Qing turned his back and clenched his fists. He tore through the air barrier and hit the huge golden Buddha palm like a mosquito. Rumble! Lu Qing's feet sank more than 7 inches into the ground. However, the golden Buddha's palm rapidly shrank and was momentarily suspended in midair. Now was the time. Lu Qing didn't attempt to break free. Instead, he seized the opportunity and arched his back. Darkness appeared around him. Coldness pervaded the air, and the stars sparkled brightly. This was his ultimate move, Cosmic Phantom. There was no gap or obstruction between it and the previous moves. It was as if he had been mentally prepared for this. Lu Qing didn't use the 9 words formula against the 6 syllables of Sanskrit mantra. Instead, he relied on the 9 rotations of 5 flames, which drained a lot of power. He wanted to give the living Buddha a chance to attack at close range. His powerful mind and Bodhi mantra had shrunk Lu Qing's senses to a range of 5 meters. Even if he wanted to exchange long-range attacks with the enemy, he wouldn't be able to tell the difference between reality and illusion. He wouldn't be able to suppress the living Buddha like he did with Xian Xiaoya. Therefore, he deliberately showed weakness and dealt with it simply. He wanted to draw the battle into the realm of close combat and use his rich experience to search for opportunities to win. As Lu Qing straightened his back and raised both his hands, the starry sky shifted upwards. Darkness covered the palms that were still emitting a faint golden glow. Layers of crystal-clear ice condensed and sealed the Buddha's palm. Vairocana lost its mystical appearance and reverted to the big-headed and thick-necked Sher Shan. This was the first time Lu Qing truly saw his opponent since the start of the battle. Although he could grasp the enemy's figure within a range of 5 meters during the short exchange, he couldn't see his actual appearance. Like a flash of lightning, the layer of ice spread rapidly, sealing the living Buddha Sher Shan within. This confirmed Lu Qing's suspicions. The complete version of thought steal was also limited by distance. In fact, it was only effective within a range of a few meters. His previous thoughts were hidden from the living Buddha. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In the dark universe, the stars flew out and crashed into Sher Shan, who was in the ice. At this moment, the living Buddha, who had yet to lose his consciousness and control of his body, suddenly erupted with layers of golden light. They transformed into a huge lotus flower that first bloomed and then formed a bud, completely enveloping Sher Shan. In an instant, the surrounding ice block seemed to have become heavier and plummeted, bringing the living Buddha away from most of the stars. Rumble. 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 Streaks of red light flashed like dense rocket launchers. Explosions sounded one after another. With both feet on the ground, the living Buddha, Sher Shan, was no longer as sacred and dignified as before. The ice layer around him shattered and even melted into water. The lotus flower formed by the Buddha's light also dissipated, leaving many tattered spots on his yellow warrior monk robe. On the other side, Lu Cheng had already broken free from the ground. He stood there, judging the timing and accumulating his strength. Every joint, every muscle, and every tendon in his body was making muffled noises. The sound was dense and shocking, and the snow that suddenly fell from the sky was also stacking up in the air, quickly forming a white divine mountain that seemed both real and illusory. Bam! Just as the living Buddha was about to land, Lu Cheng clenched his fist and punched forward. The few meters between them were filled up in an instant. Rumble. The accumulated strength in Lu Cheng's body burst out like a flood. The snow mountain around him collapsed with a loud bang. Accompanied by the wind from his punch, it rushed towards the living Buddha in a mighty manner. This was a variant of the ice sect snowstorm, the real mega avalanche. The ice sect didn't only have control and martial arts that could gradually influence the opponent, they also had secret arts for strong attacks. The only problem was that they took too long to prepare. Faced with the collapse of the snow mountain, Sher Shan didn't have time to react. He could only take a deep breath, expand his body, gather the Buddha's light, and transform into the simple wisdom king with indigo skin. He smashed forward with all 6 arms. Rumble. White flowers flew in all directions. The mega avalanche paused for a moment before continuing forward, leveling the pothole. Sher Shan took advantage of the pause and dodged pathetically, avoiding the mega avalanche. However, before he could widen the distance, Lu Cheng closed in again. He spread out his arms, coordinated with his legs, and launched a round of aggressive attacks. He couldn't let the living Buddha leave this area again. He used mental suppression and the Bodhi mantra to regain control of the situation. Bam, bam, bam. Lu Cheng's fists were burning with a faint purple hue, showing a heavy and scorching intent. His attacks were extremely aggressive, burning off Sher Shan's sleeves and charring his skin. On the other hand, the living Buddha stood firmly on the ground, neither swaying nor swaying. Fist against fist, foot against foot, he did not show the slightest sign of weakness. The negative effects and the burning effect of the fire force seemed to have disappeared without a trace. With his feet as the center, cracks appeared on the ground. Each crack had traces of being burned. Lu Cheng attacked crazily for a while and gradually reached the point where he needed to catch his breath. Seeing that the living Buddha was still as unmoving as a mountain, another plan flashed through his mind. Take the initiative to change the rhythm and find an opportunity to use the formation formula. Bam! Lu Cheng swung his right fist to the side, wearing a faint purple flame glove, and ruthlessly smashed it on Sher Shan's charred forearm, causing his muscles to tremble slightly. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lu Cheng took the initiative to swing backwards. Just as he was about to quickly use the formation formula, he suddenly thought of the living Buddha's thought steal. He knows that I will use the formation formula. Lu Cheng followed his instincts and withdrew his Dan force, distancing the stars from the darkness and causing the edges of the universe to become colder. Another art of control, Lament of the Ice Queen. Bam! Lu Cheng took another step forward and struck out with his palm. Sher Shan, who was about to turn around, stopped abruptly and raised his hand to push back. Thought Steel can indeed hear my thoughts, but if I change my mind in a split second, he might not be able to react in time. Lu Qing seemed to have discovered something. His palm strike was so resolute. Bam! Amidst the dull thud, the living Buddha's surroundings burned with glassy flames. They were instantly frozen, suspended in the air like a work of art. However, they quickly collapsed. Bam bam bam. The collapse of the guardian glassy flames prevented Sher Shan from being sealed by the layer of ice. He took a step back and his expression turned solemn. Seeing this, Lu Qing raised his other hand and formed a seal. He said in a low voice, "Formation." At the same time, the living Buddha, Sher Shan, also said solemnly, "Wang." The Buddhas will intensified and the air became tame, not turning into a cage. Bam! The living Buddha took a step forward, his expression solemn and his gaze indifferent. He struck out with his palm as though he was looking down at Lu Qing. Lu Qing suddenly felt a sense of danger. Just as he was about to dodge, he suddenly became dazed. He felt as though he had become a monk reciting scriptures and fiddling with prayer beads all night long. He seemed to be devout and focused, but he would always pause inadvertently as though he was thinking of a certain someone, prostrating on the ground, kowtowing step by step in a pilgrimage, but the image in his mind wasn't of Buddha, ostracized, far away from home, unable to find peace. Fragments of memories appeared one after another, causing Lu Qing to experience thousands of years in an instant, experiencing the incomplete lives of generations of living Buddhas. This made him feel as though his memories were in chaos and he was mentally and physically exhausted. Finally, after much difficulty, he outlined the confrontation formula. His body and mind were clear, but his spirit was also drained. The figure of the living Buddha before him became clear. Lu Qing made a turn to avoid facing him head-on and was about to use the simplified wholeness formula to refresh his status. However, at this moment, his sense of danger suddenly emerged. Before he could react, he felt a chill on his forehead. Sher Shan's thick palm had already pressed down on his forehead. The living Buddha's figure re-outlined, his expression calm. Lu Qing stopped in his tracks and understood the reason. Just now, his spirit was drained and his ice heart broke. Even if he was within 5 meters, he was still confused by the illusion. At this moment, the referee announced loudly, "The living Buddha wins. P.S. Before 12 a.m., please guarantee the minimum monthly votes." Chapter 638. As expected of the mysterious living Buddha. Hearing the referee's announcement, Lu Qing stopped drawing the outline of the wholeness formula, stood up straight, and cupped his hands in greeting. Living Buddha Sher Shan smiled and put his palms together. He chanted the Buddha's name softly. Despite his young age, he had the air of an eminent monk. He turned around leisurely and walked to the side of River Heart Island. After a few steps, he suddenly paused, rubbed his stomach, and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. After doing all this, he pretended to look around casually and quickened his pace. He didn't take the boat but walked directly on the water. He returned to the ship where Daxing Temple was and took the prepared vegetarian meal from the hands of the little monk who came up to him. As he ate contentedly, Sher Shan thought helplessly that as a living Buddha of Tantric Buddhism, he actually had to abide by Daxing Temple's commandments and eat vegetarian. Lu Qing rubbed his throbbing temples, walked to the side of the boat, and jumped on. He didn't cause any turbulence or ripples. Once the boat started moving, he couldn't help but look back at River Heart Island. He replayed the previous battle. The living Buddha's realm and standard were indeed much stronger than his, especially in the field of mental strength. He could have beaten his current self, and he had fully utilized this trait. It wasn't difficult for him to win. With his current strength, he had barely touched the edge of second pin. He was able to win against Wang Ke because of his rich experience in life and death battles. Not to mention his outstanding performance on the spot, the key to his victory was that Wang Ke wasn't used to his ice and fire as one and fusion of martial arts and cultivation, fighting style. He was caught off guard by certain moves and suffered a loss. If they had immediately fought a second or third time, the outcome might not have been the same. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Lu Qing reassessed himself and returned the little bit of arrogance he had accumulated since he made the great leap back to its original form. This mentality was not something that could be used for the rest of one's life. As one's strength increased and one's victories piled up, pride and arrogance would still quietly grow. One had to constantly wipe one's heart and soul. Almost all the experts more or less had similar problems, and the Dragon King's conceit was even more obvious to the extreme. After reviewing his battle and himself, Lu Qing approached Longhu Club's ship. He pressed the button and leaped up, landing firmly on the deck. He took his phone, ring, wallet, and other items from Amen. At this moment, Yan Zhika had already sent a message. Looking up at the sky, rolling my eyes, she said, "I feel like you were tricked by the Bodhi mantra in the end, yes." Lu Qing turned sideways to Amen, using his body to block any possible line of sight. He sent an emoji of dark clouds over my head, squatting in the corner and drawing circles. "You can start comforting me now, but why do I feel that you don't look too sad?" Yan Zhika replied with a blank expression. Lu Qing scratched his chin and said, "Maybe it's because I was mentally prepared. Anyway, I haven't been eliminated yet. Not liking to lose is one thing, but knowing one's own limitations is another. I'm not depressed now, but I'm suddenly filled with motivation. I can't wait to watch the replay and study the living Buddha's fighting style in depth. I can't wait to have another match with him. That's a good attitude. Come, let me give you a kiss," Yan Zhika said, half complimenting and half consoling him. She quickly changed the topic. "Is the living Buddha's mental strength very powerful? His penultimate palm strike is similar to the heart reflection punch of the Theravada sect. They both imprint their own feelings into my heart. However, the living Buddha's methods are more profound. The heart reflection punch can only transmit specific feelings like pain, torture, and distress. But he can pull me into his memories and experience 1,000 years in an instant, experiencing the lives of generations of living Buddhas. If a person below the physical invulnerability stage were to encounter such a situation multiple times, they might break down on the spot or have a split personality. That's why the Bodhi mantra is also known as the Bodhi mantra." Yan Zhika's beautiful eyes rolled up as she speculated with great interest. Experiencing memories and experiencing life. "Qing, do you think the reincarnation of the living Buddhas is related to this Bodhi heart mantra? But it's more complicated and has stricter Dharma access?" Lu Qing glanced at it and replied with an emoji of taking in a deep breath, "Hey, you don't say. I think it's possible. Coach Yen has a great eye. When the reincarnated soul child was not found, the previous generation of living Buddha would use the disciple with the best potential as a substitute. However, it would be impossible for them to perform the complete enlightenment. At such times, using a simplified version of the Bodhi mantra might be a backup plan to ensure continuity." "Hee hee." Yan Zhika laughed and said, "Don't think about it. Let's talk about it after some rest. Someone is exhausted. I'm going for my morning exercise, okay?" Lu Qing waved goodbye and put the diamond ring back on his finger. He adjusted it so that it was facing up. He looked at the horizon subconsciously and saw the red clouds burning. Dusk was coming and the sun was setting in the west. After Yan Zhika put down her phone, she flipped open the blanket and got out of bed. After washing up, she changed into a white martial arts suit with black edges. It's hard to give an example. The corner of Lu Cheng's mouth twitched. He replied with disdain, "Priest, I think you're as good at making lame jokes as my brother-in-law." Just as he finished, Peng Lian's name was read out by the guest. Then, his opponent was confirmed. Daxing Temple, Zhi Hai. Wisdom King, Zhi Hai. Another battle of the heavenly sons. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Peng Lian typed out a message. He didn't even consider the possibility of being eliminated if he lost another match. At this moment, Lu Qing heard his name. He quickly focused and looked forward to his opponent. After a while, the guest flipped a piece of paper and showed it. Shangqing Sect, Warrior Sage, Qian Dong Lu. F*ck. Do you have to be so ruthless? Facing the big boss in the last round. Lu Qing didn't know if he should be depressed or happy. At this moment, and Chaoyang reminded him. You're in the 18th match. Maybe you won't have to fight Warrior Sage. Enough people have been eliminated before. Same goes for Priest. The 17th match might not even happen. In the first 16 matches, most of the participants had lost at least one match. In fact, 9 of the matches were between them. There was bound to be someone eliminated. As long as another 12 were eliminated, the 5th round would be over. Makes sense. Lu Qing suddenly felt a little disappointed. After they finished their discussion and went to do other things, Renli suddenly appeared again and asked, "Who's your brother-in-law?" "The guest who drew the lot seems to be the sect leader of your sect, Priest. Where is he?" She was too excited and agitated just now. P.S. Guaranteed monthly votes. Chapter 639. Keeping his emotions in check, Lu Qing sent the results of the draw to Yen Jika. Covering face expression, I'm about to experience the highest level below the forbidden level. This was the representation of the strongest combat strength among the physical invulnerability experts. After lamenting, he said truthfully, "It's a pity that I might not be able to participate in this round. I'm sure there will be enough people in the earlier rounds." After a few seconds, Yen Jika, who had been worried about this, replied, covering mouth expression, "I feel like you're trembling in fear and looking forward to it. You masochist." Without waiting for Lu Cheng's reply, she added, sitting obediently expression, "This feels like a dream. 3 years ago, if you had said that your goal was to face the warrior sage in a few years, I would have cheered you on while laughing at you mercilessly. Life is indeed like a dream. To be honest, I haven't thought about how far I'll go in this master battle. It'll depend on my luck," replied Lu Cheng. Snickering expression, "Since that's the case, it's not a bad thing to take the opportunity to find the gap between myself and the top physical invulnerability experts." "Yeah, Cheng is the best," replied Yen Jika, half cheekily and half approvingly. While she was busy with her studies, Lu Qing skimmed through the highlights of warrior sage Qian Dongluo's last 30 matches. What if they really meet in the 5th round? Even though it was just a quick glance, Lu Qing couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine. There was only one thought in his mind, so F*King awesome. It wasn't that he hadn't watched Qian Dongluo's matches in the past. The matches between the warrior sage and the dragon king were replayed repeatedly and still popular. However, from the perspective of an opponent, a physical invulnerability expert, he felt different when he observed this once-in-a-thousand-years genius. Xin Xiaoya had fused the death sect and surpassed her predecessors. Her lethal chill was intimidating. Wang Ke had a deep understanding of martial arts. His normal punches and kicks were already much more powerful than those of the same level. His physical invulnerability moves were faster and more powerful. The living Buddha had a strong spirit and many tricks up his sleeves. It was hard to tell what was real and what was fake. These were the characteristics and strengths of the few physical invulnerability mighty ones that Lu Qing had fought before. And the warrior sage, Qian Donglu, had them all. He was no longer a potential Grandmaster or a future Grandmaster. He was a Grandmaster in name and in reality. He had created many martial arts, and all kinds of secret arts were terrifyingly pure. He had returned to the origin. After watching the battle videos of the warrior sage, I feel a chill in my heart. Lu Qing picked up his phone and sent an emoji to Yen Jika with tears of laughter. "I'm going out for supper to calm myself down." After he changed his clothes and was ready to go out, Yen Jika replied with an emoji of holding back her laughter, "Come, let big sister rub your head. I heard that the crayfish in Juku is very good. You can try it." A few seconds later, she sent an emoji of squatting in the corner and drawing circles. I was wrong. It's already November. There's definitely no meat left in the crayfish. I've been studying too much recently and forgot about this. Haha, I've already thought about it. There's a barbecue stall here that's not bad. If it's comparable to the barbecue in Shushan, I'll take you there next time. Lu Qing put on a pair of black-framed glasses that covered half of his face and a brown baseball cap. He took his phone and wallet and checked himself in the mirror at the entrance. After confirming that he looked good, he opened the door and walked out of the hotel. He didn't want to disturb Amen. There was no need to trouble her assistant with such things. The autumn wind was rustling and the night was chilly. Lu Qing followed the GPS and walked 2 streets in a strolling manner. Finally, he saw the brick factory barbecue. He saw that the roadside tables were filled with people at the same time. Business is so good. The food should be good. Lu Qing muttered. He walked over and found the waitress. Are you eating here or taking away? The waitress asked in an orderly manner. Lu Qing felt the refreshing autumn wind and answered with a smile, I'll eat here. Then you'll have to suffer a little. The waitress said embarrassedly, Look, we don't have any more tables. How about we give you a stool to put the barbecue on? It's just right for you to sit on a small stool. Lu Qing looked at the plastic stool. He pondered for a few seconds and said, Sure. A mighty one with physical invulnerability, the heavenly son of China, was sitting on a small stool with a blue plastic stool in front of him. Lu Qing was in a daze at first. Then, he took a picture and sent it to his little fairy. It feels like doing homework at the door when I was young. Back then, in order to watch the children play, he would bring out 2 stools, one high and one short, and sit in the open space outside the corridor to do his homework. He would do his homework for a while and play for a while. Before Yan Zhika could reply, his eyes were suddenly covered by a black shadow. He looked up and saw a tall and fat man standing in front of him, holding a small stool and a plastic stool in his hands. The fat man was wearing a gray plush hat and a black short-sleeved t-shirt. Although he hid it well, Lu Qing recognized him at first glance. He was the living Buddha, Shan, who had just defeated him in the afternoon. Living Buddha, Shan. Shan had just sat down when he felt someone sizing him up. He followed the line of sight and was stunned. Lu Qing. In the background of the barbecue stall, the 2 of them stared at each other and didn't speak for a long time until the waitress came over and asked, What would you like to order? Lu Qing was stunned for a few seconds and said, 20 sticks of beef, 20 sticks of pork ribs. Shan followed closely and said, 20 sticks of potatoes, 20 sticks of eggplant. After announcing their dishes, they paused for a moment. Lu Qing and Shan suddenly laughed and were no longer restrained. I didn't expect to meet you, Shan said casually. Lu Qing shook his head and laughed. After changing the way he addressed Shan a few times, he said, I also didn't expect Master to come to such a place personally. Shan was silent for a while before replying, That sounds a little weird. Just a casual remark. Lu Qing laughed dryly and didn't say anything else. They weren't familiar with each other and lacked the foundation to continue the conversation. But should I take the initiative to pay the bill later? Do physical invulnerability experts care about this? It's just a matter of a few barbecue skewers. Lu Qing's thoughts flew and he was in a dilemma. He picked up his phone and shared this matter with Coach Yan for guidance. However, Yan Zhika was in the middle of an important lesson and didn't reply immediately. After a while, the waitress served some of the barbecue skewers. The streaky pork shone brightly and the aroma was strong. Shan couldn't help but swallow his saliva at the small table opposite him. Lu Qing was amused and recalled that Living Buddha only ordered vegetarian dishes. He couldn't help but tease, Master, do you want to eat? From the memory fragments you passed on to me, Tantric Buddhism doesn't abstain from this. Shan's expression changed slightly and he sighed with a smile. Some monks in Tantric Buddhism, let me put it in words that you can understand. In order to see through killing, they advocate entering into killing. After experiencing it and understanding it, they can achieve great enlightenment. So, it's fine for Master to eat meat skewers. After all, it's to see through. Lu Qing smiled and asked knowingly. Shan shook his head slightly. What I mean is that this is wrong. It's just an excuse for your own enjoyment and mistakes. Experiencing it doesn't mean you have to do it yourself. Everything in the world is there for you to look up to. That's true. Lu Qing replied thoughtfully. He then smiled and said, anyway, generations of living Buddhas have experienced eating meat. Master, you're also experienced. It's not a loss. Yes, it's not a loss. Shi Shan sighed. How can modern spices and modern culinary skills be compared to ancient times? I pity you. Lu Qing didn't say what was on his mind. Instead, he recommended good food. There's a vegetarian restaurant in Gaofen called Yalu. The meat dishes they make taste the same as the real thing. Master, you can try it when you're free. Following that, the two of them chatted happily. When the barbecue skewers were served, Lu Qing took a picture and sent it to his little fairy. At this moment, Yenjika finally had a chance. Stunned expression, she said, the big monk is so greedy. In the end, he met a primary school student doing his homework at the door. Lu Qing couldn't help but laugh. He quickly typed, please show some respect. These are two mighty ones with physical invulnerability. After replying, he raised his head and saw Shi Shan looking at him with a weird expression. Haven't you seen other people showing off their love? Lu Qing cursed in his heart. Soon after, he remembered that the living Buddha in the memory fragments also had feelings. Shi Shan laughed and said, love is easy to find, but it's hard to find long-term. I don't like to hear this. Lu Qing organized his words and said, nothing in the universe can last forever. It's the same for stars and living things. If that's the case, why do we have to hope for a relationship that won't change? Life is short. As long as we can maintain our love for a little longer than this, it's fine. After a moment of silence, Shi Shan picked up the barbecue and said, almsgiver, your words are quite sharp. After saying that, he stood up and turned around to leave. I thought Master would say a few words of wisdom, said Lu Qing, slightly surprised. Shi Shan's face was very young, and his expression was a little mischievous. However, he gave off a feeling of weariness. I won't say it, I won't say it. It's hard to say it. He shook his head, carried the barbecue, and walked away slowly. Lu Qing stared blankly and felt that Shi Shan did have the demeanor of an expert. At this moment, the waitress came over. Looking at Shi Shan's back, she said, you're paying for his bill? Huh? Lu Qing was dumbfounded. This monk didn't pay the bill. Where's the conscience of a monk? After being laughed at by Yenjika for more than a day, Lu Qing welcomed the 5th round of the double elimination competition. Renli, who was the first to fight, lost to the King of Swords, Wu Qiao, without any chance to retaliate. After the first 16 rounds, there were a total of 11 eliminated participants. Peng Liyun had no choice but to go on stage and challenge the Wisdom King, Ji Hai. This battle was unusually intense. There were a few times when Lu Qing thought that Peng Liyun could turn the tables, but the Wisdom King easily resolved the situation. In the end, the Wisdom King won without any controversy. With Peng Liyun's elimination, Lu Qing entered the top 32 and didn't face the warrior sage, Qian Donglu. At 9 p.m., the draw for the top 32 began. He heard his name in the second round. Longhu Club, Lu Qing. When Lu Qing sat up straight, his opponent appeared. Guanwai League, Lu Yongyuan. God-slaying saber, Lu Yongyuan, the man with the potential to become the King of Swords. P.S. Damn, after returning to Sichuan, of course I have to accompany my parents. Their schedule is very different from mine, so I'll have to put up with them for the next few days. That's why the update times are sometimes early and sometimes late. Chapter 640. As a veteran fan of professional matches, the moment he heard his opponent's name, all sorts of information about him appeared in his mind. Lu Yongyuan was the champion of the Guanwai League, a first pin expert who had dominated for more than a decade. He was a quarter Russian, and his facial features were well defined. He was quite handsome, and his eyes even had a faint green tint. Ever since he turned 30, his hair had been combed back neatly. Even though he had aged a few years, he looked more like a leader. Lu Yongyuan was born in the martial arts school system of the Yanzhao League. He was only a year younger than Dong Baxian, and in that era, he was as famous as Dong Baxian, just like Peng Liyun and Ren Li in the first 2 years of the university martial arts circle. It was just that his reputation was limited to a smaller circle and wasn't as well known. After reaching the Dan stage, he was roped in by the Guanwai League in his hometown and left his alma mater. If he had kept a low profile, no one would remember him, and no one would slander him. However, he grew stronger and stronger day by day. Therefore, the hatred and disgust of the supporters of the Yanzhao League grew by the day. They felt that he had betrayed them and was a complete traitor. If he had stayed in the capital and formed a double insurance with Dong Baxian, and with the cooperation of the first pin experts like Lin Shuyao, the Yanzhao League today would have been able to compete with the Longhu League, Shanqing League, and Daxing League. Lu Yongyuan didn't care about this. In an interview, he even said that being condemned by the public would only make him stronger. This was the truth. He was the kind of martial artist who would perform better in bigger situations. The stronger the enemy he faced, the stronger he would be. He had once slain both the warrior sage and the dragon king when they were in perfect condition, leaving behind a beautiful story. This was also the origin of the nickname, God-slaying saber. However, other than the God-slaying saber, he was also known as the nervous saber. When he encountered an opponent of the same level but not as strong as him, he was often listless, unexcited, and absent-minded. As a result, he became the title-level expert who had been defeated the most times. Because of this, he had only received 2 titles in total, and they didn't include the warrior sage and the king. Regardless, the God-slaying saber was one of the few big shots in the martial arts world. In the hotel where the Guanwai League was staying, Lu Yongyuan, with his slick-back hair, was lying on a deck chair on the balcony. Outside the window, the night was dark, and the lights were bright. He closed his eyes and gently tapped the dark green scabbard beside him with his right hand. The world-famous God-slaying saber was placed inside as if it was quietly sleeping, waiting for the moment when the wind and clouds converged. In the living room, which was separated from the balcony by a door, the big-screen television was broadcasting the drawing ceremony for the top 32. The sound was very low and almost indistinct. When he heard his name, Lu Yongyuan paused in his tapping of the scabbard. He didn't open his eyes. After a short pause, his right hand began to tap the dark green scabbard again. It was slow and natural, with a long rhythm. Outside, the autumn rain was hazy, dripping against the window, complementing each other. In this kind of silence and peace, there was suddenly a low and clear sound of collision from the dark green scabbard, as if the saber inside was jumping with joy. The clanging sounds converged into a dragon's roar that seemed to come from the depths of the sea. As soon as the results of the draw were out, many posts appeared in Lu Cheng's fan forum. "All the good names are taken by Dog's expression," said, covering face and sighing expression, "it can't be helped." The top 32 of every title battle are mostly made up of peerless experts and a small number of ordinary physical and vulnerability experts who have recently maxed out their luck. It seems that Lu Cheng's luck has come to an end. He didn't draw Ren Li and the others. Since that's the case, it doesn't matter who he fights. After all, it's not his home ground, so he doesn't have any geographical advantage, said a plumber eating mushrooms. Eternal Nightfall, Yan Shaoling quickly asked, "I heard that on this road, passerby A likes to fail miserably. Moreover, he fought hard to eliminate Liang Yifan in the 5th round and suffered serious injuries. My senior should have a chance of winning, right? For a physical and vulnerability expert with that kind of injury, he will recover in a few days. Don't expect that." Road to the arena mercilessly dispelled Yan Xiaoling's fantasy. Laughing Tears expression, said, "If God-slaying saber wasn't injured, with his usual performance, it's not impossible for him to lose to Lu Qing due to carelessness. But now that he's injured, he will definitely be more cautious and careful. In this case, Lu Cheng's chances are slim. It's a bad thing that the opponent is injured." Miachichi didn't expect such an explanation. "It's better to watch a title battle with an attitude of appreciation," said, funny expression, a newcomer to the forum, Tang Chuxia expression. He was a strong talker and was once obsessed with cultivation. As a result, he developed hysteria and shouted every day that today was the age of chaos. Later on, he was accidentally involved in a car accident and almost lost his life. Since then, he turned over a new leaf and resumed his old hobby. As he thought that Lu Cheng's performance was very similar to the cultivation in his fantasy, he became a fan. Listening to their replies, Yan Shaoling replied with an emoji of, "I'm in a good mood" with a sad face. "Then I'll bet on the 10 yuan senior to win." "Hey, shouldn't you bet on Lu Yongyuan to win? Lu Cheng will be happy if he wins and get money if he loses," said Okamoto's fan, in surprise. Yan Shaoling looked at them with disdain expression. "I'm praying. Do you understand? Praying. Repeat after me, Qidao. I want to bet too, I want to bet too. I'll bet 20 yuan. Brahman jumped out. At this time, the drawing of lots continued. The battles between the strong fighters made the audience excited. They couldn't wait for the day after tomorrow to come. Kongtong School, Renli. An old Taoist with silver hair mixed with black hair read out a new name. Within a few seconds, he picked out Renli's opponent. Shizhou Island, Shang Yud. Lion King, Shang Yud. During the drawing of lots, they usually only read out the name of the fighter. However, when it came to fighters with titles, they had to add their titles as a sign of respect. It was the same for special titles like Living Buddha. As for fighters like Dragon King and Warrior Sage, who often had 2 or 3 titles at the same time, they would pick their favorite. Fighters who had won the title of King more than 3 times would always have a similar title. As for Qian Donglu, because he had held on to the title of Warrior Sage for a long time, he had mentioned that Warrior Sage was him for a few years. Gradually, it became his nickname. Lu Cheng, who was chatting with Yan Zhika about the god-slaying saber, heard the result and immediately entered the group chat. "Looks like it's your treat this time." Although both of them had encountered titled masters and most likely wouldn't be able to progress any further and would be considered eliminated in the same round, Renli's match would come later, which fit the keyword of persisting longer. "I think so too," agreed Peng Liyun, who had been eliminated by Wisdom King. "Hey, Taoist, you seem to be in a good mood," Lu Qing deliberately teased. Peng Liyun quickly replied, "Aren't you the same?" A certain husky, who had drawn the god-slaying saber, was in high spirits. Fights like this were more about finding the problem, recognizing the gap, and gaining something was considered a success. At this moment, Renli popped up and said, "Don't be afraid. The god-slaying saber often loses. Although it's okay to cheer him on, why do I feel like Renli is trying to stir up trouble? In other words, don't be afraid, just do it." Lu Cheng's mouth twitched as he gave a dry laugh in response. With this interruption, he settled his thoughts and calmed down. He began to collect his emotions and asked Amen to get the video of the god-slaying saber's battle from the club. The afternoon of the day after tomorrow, at the arena on River Heart Island. The sun was high in the sky, the ground was burning, and the river was flowing east. The humidity was heavy. Lu Qing stood at the front of the cruise ship and looked at the leveled ground. At this moment, Yan Zhika sent a message. Smirking expression, she said, "This is your first time fighting with a weapon, right?" Lu Qing replied, snickering expression, "If modern firearms don't count. I've fought with a gun before." "You're so annoying. Don't worry about these details." Yan Zhika replied with a disdainful expression. After chatting for a while, Lu Qing looked up at the referee. He smiled, lowered his head, and said, "It's my turn." After replying, he locked the screen and passed the phone to Amen. With a light leap, he landed on the bow of the small boat. The waves parted as he moved forward slowly. Just as he reached River Heart Island, he saw a figure approaching from afar and gradually getting bigger. He stood between the water and the sky, as though he could absorb the light, making the area around him seem darker than it was at 2 in the afternoon. Step by step, the well-featured Lu Yong walked forward like an emissary of the eternal night. He held a long saber in his right hand. The dark green scabbard was quiet and restrained. But when Lu Qing saw it, he was shocked. He felt as though there was an evil dragon locked in it that was about to break free and bite him. P.S. This time it's a few minutes earlier, but it'll be at midnight. It should be back to normal by the day after tomorrow. Chapter 641. As Lu Yongyuan walked forward step by step, the entire Jiangxin island gradually darkened. It wasn't until he stopped at the referee's designated spot that the feeling of darkness eased. Lu Yongyuan stood quietly at the same spot. His gaze fell on the hilt of the saber in his right hand. Following the mysterious curve, he looked at the tip of the saber and the soil it pointed at. When Lu Qing approached, he finally raised his head. His pure, blade-like eyes reflected his opponent's figure. It was just a simple glance, but Lu Qing felt as though a divine weapon was pointed at his forehead. The hair on his back stood on end. The surrounding environment was cut out from the world by the saber intent, shrinking into an isolated and sealed cage. Although he didn't draw his saber, it was better than drawing it. This was the first time Lu Qing had encountered such an aura battle. He couldn't help but sigh. Indeed, he lived up to his reputation. At this moment, he felt as though he had been exiled to a desolate desert, facing the boundless darkness alone. He couldn't escape and had nowhere to escape. As this thought flashed through his mind, Lu Qing formed the ice heart. Around him, a mass of red, a mass of gold, and a mass of light blue condensed, illuminating the darkness and resisting the saber force that was enveloping him. Lu Yongyuan didn't stop him. He looked at his 5 flames indifferently. At this moment, the referee finally confirmed the situation. He raised his right hand and announced loudly, "Conversation time starts now." Lu Yongyuan raised his head and looked away from Lu Qing. He looked at the clouds in the distance and said in a deep and magnetic voice, "My saber technique originated from the dark infinite scripture. After 6 years of hard work, I mastered it." When he said this, his expression didn't change at all. His deep and three-dimensional facial features and sparkling green eyes made him look like a demon. His neatly combed back hair was inexplicably dyed with the vicissitudes of life. What was he trying to say? Lu Qing knew very well that the Guanwei League used the dark infinite scripture, which was the secret art of the dark sect, as its foundation. They also mixed in a divine physical skill. Lu Yongyuan didn't wait for his opponent's reply. He stared at the horizon and continued, "In recent years, I have often felt the existence of shackles. The secret art of the predecessors is both a help and a cage. My saber technique originated from this, so it's time to break free from it." He retracted his gaze and looked into Lu Qing's eyes again. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly. "I've spent 5 whole years reviewing myself and my saber techniques. Finally, I've gained something. Previously, when I encountered powerful enemies, my instincts overcame my unfamiliarity. I never had the time to use it. The impulse to swing my saber is getting stronger and stronger. This battle came at the right time." Halfway through, Lu Qing roughly understood what his opponent was trying to say. Lu Yongyuan had mastered what he had learned in the first half of his life and created his own unique blade technique. However, due to the fact that he had encountered opponents of similar strength in the previous rounds, he had habitually used his original moves under great pressure. He hadn't found an opportunity to practice his new technique in actual combat. Now, he wanted to test the knife on himself. Without waiting for Lu Qing to speak, Lu Yongyuan switched the weapon to his left hand. His right hand gripped the hilt of the saber, which had been rubbed until it shone like a mirror. "As long as you can block 9 of my attacks, I will consider this as my loss." As soon as he said that, the audience who were listening to the broadcast went into an uproar. Isn't this looking down on him?" Nye Chichi posted in astonishment. In her opinion, even if Lu Qing was facing a titled mighty one in perfect condition, as long as it wasn't the likes of Dragon King or Warrior Sage, even if Lu Qing lost miserably in the end, he wouldn't be defeated in 9 moves. It wouldn't be a problem for him to withstand 20 to 30 moves. It would be normal for him to fight for 5 to 6 minutes. Exactly. Eternal Nightfall, Yen Shaoling and Brahman couldn't find any other words to say. They could only follow suit. This guy is too arrogant. Unparalleled Dragon King replied, comical expression. You guys fell for the provocation of God-slaying saber. That's true. Yen Shaoling replied, scratching head expression. Then, will Lu Yongyuan admit defeat if senior can withstand 9 attacks? Definitely. Under the watchful eyes of so many people in broad daylight, every word is as good as a nail. Unless he doesn't want his old face anymore. Unparalleled Dragon King replied without hesitation. Which martial artist doesn't care about face? Puzzled expression, Yen Shaoling asked again, if senior doesn't take the provocation, won't he be digging his own grave? This shows that he's very confident in his self-created saber technique. Unparalleled Dragon King said firmly. See, you said it yourself. His confidence is inflated, and he looks down on others too much. He's too arrogant. Yen Shaoling changed the topic again. Unparalleled Dragon King was speechless. After a while, he replied, damn, your IQ is actually online today. This was the first time Lu Qing encountered such a situation. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't angry. However, he quickly suppressed his agitated thoughts with icy heart, and began to suspect Lu Yongyuan's true intentions. Is he trying to provoke me? To make me lose my cool and choose to be rash? That's not right. He should know that I've mastered enemy heart freezing move. Such psychological warfare wouldn't be effective. Is he serious? As thoughts ran through his mind, Lu Cheng's eyes became as deep as the starry sky. His tone was calm as he replied, then I'll look forward to seeing senior's saber technique. He didn't agree to the promise of 9 sabers, but he didn't deny it either. Lu Yongyuan nodded slightly and half closed his eyes. He didn't speak anymore, as though he had turned into a stone statue. After a short while, the referee at the edge of River Heart Island gathered his Dantian Qi and shouted, begin. Clang. A long and distant sound suddenly came from Lu Yongyuan's scabbard. It was like the roar of a real dragon from the depths of the ocean, reverberating in Lu Cheng's ears and heart. The sound of the saber reached its peak as soon as it appeared. Lu Yongyuan flicked and released his left hand, and his right hand suddenly pulled out the famous, god-slaying saber. With a twist of his waist and a pull of his shoulder, the saber light cut across a distance of more than 30 meters and slashed towards Lu Cheng. It seemed to have absorbed all the light around it, making it brighter and purer. It made the 20-meter radius around Lu Cheng darker and darker. All sorts of hidden dangers were brewing in the darkness. Zzz. The golden, crimson, and faint purple colors around Lu Cheng were eroded by the darkness. They shrunk rapidly and were on the verge of going out of control. They were like snow under the scorching sun at noon. In his eyes, the line of heavenly light was dazzling and trembling continuously. Every tremor seemed to contain a change that corresponded to different dodging methods. At this moment, Lu Qing didn't hesitate. He felt that retreating wasn't a good idea, and neither was defending. Once he used his body movement, he might be able to dodge the saber light, but he wouldn't be able to escape the terrifying darkness. Vice versa. This was a two-pronged attack with natural coordination. Thoughts flashed through his mind. With the reflection of his god, Lu Qing no longer hesitated. Following his final judgment, he made a response. He gathered the half-melted crimson, faint blue, and faint purple fireballs into a star that didn't explode but emitted light and heat. The moment the darkness was illuminated, he suddenly raised his hands and slapped towards the saber light from both sides. The positions where his palms were facing each other were deep and cold. Bam! Zzz. The brilliance gathered on the god-slaying saber was about to explode, but it was swallowed up by the darkness and disappeared without a trace. Light against darkness, darkness against light. In that split second, Lu Qing grasped the characteristics of his cosmic flow and used all his strength. With the star on the outside and the darkness on the inside, he finally managed to block Lu Yongyuan's first strike. But before he could get a good look at the god-slaying saber or feel its metallic coldness, he heard the saber vibrating at high speed. He realized that there was nothing between his palms. The god-slaying saber had disappeared. It had disappeared mysteriously, as though it had never existed. At this moment, the surroundings were dark, and the saber seemed to have melted into it. Lu Qing felt a sense of danger. Exerting strength in his legs, he swung his waist and bounced more than 10 meters away. At the same time, he threw a punch with Emperor Yen and Ice Spirit in front of him. Blazing white flames with hints of purple intersected with the white frost of ice crystals. Bam! 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 Clang! After a few clangs, Lu Cheng's fists, which were covered in heavy purple flames, hit something solid. Sparks flew everywhere, and the saber that had disappeared reappeared in front of him. As he was unsteady on his feet while retreating, after blocking the god-slaying saber, Lu Cheng's body swayed and staggered. At this moment, Lu Yongyuan suddenly lowered his back and bounced out. He ran around his opponent at high speed, leaving behind 9 shadows in the blink of an eye. Each of his shadows held a saber and slashed forward ferociously. The saber light was deep and terrifying, turning into a torrential downpour that enveloped Lu Qing. Lu Qing felt that his enemy had finally stretched his body and revealed his true form. A black dragon with 9 heads spiraled downwards, opening its 9 mouths and tearing at him at the same time. It was violent and ferocious. The shadows were definitely remnants, but the saber light could be divided into 9 real shadows. Being attacked from all directions, Lu Qing couldn't find an opening to dodge. He could only form an ice wall to cover his body. Clang! 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 The saber light tore the crystal apart, causing it to disintegrate rapidly. Taking advantage of this short delay, Lu Qing visualized and gathered his force. Bam! 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 Just as the ice wall was completely broken, he had already exploded his Dan Qi. His fists were blazing white and slightly purple. His invasion was like fire, his attack was like fire. Clang! Clang! With the help of the deity above him, Lu Cheng's machine gun-like fists shattered most of the remaining saber light, shattering the darkness that enveloped him. Then, he took a few steps back to distance himself from Lu Yongyuan, preparing for the 4th saber strike. At this moment, Lu Qing looked fine on the surface, but the clothes on his back were torn, revealing a foot-long saber wound. His flesh was twisted, and the color was black. On the other side, Lu Yongyuan didn't take advantage of the situation to close in. Instead, he stood in place and said with a slight smile, "The 3 strikes just now were called Utmost Darkness, Daggerless, and 9-een. This is the 4th strike." He paused for a moment, then swung his saber again, accompanied by that deep and magnetic voice, "Square and circle." The 4th strike, square and circle. P.S. Looking for recommendations on Monday. Chapter 642. The god-slaying saber slashed down from above. It was plain and simple, but Lu Qing felt his surroundings suddenly dim, as though he was isolated from the world. Not only that, but they were also surging with undercurrents, piling up layer after layer of invisible shackles, making it difficult for him to break free. It was difficult for him to punch and kick, as if he could only watch as the long saber slashed down, resisting metal with his flesh. It was as if he had a big hammer, but he had a head. Nothing can be accomplished without rules. The saber entered Lu Cheng's eyes. Its shape was blurry and dim, as though it occupied the entire sky and ruled over everything. Other than that, there was nothing else. At that moment, Lu Cheng's soul was temporarily shaken. His body felt as though it was tied up by ropes, and he couldn't move. Facing the god-slaying saber, he didn't have time to think. Following the flash of thought and the martial arts accumulation and battle experience rooted in his root pulp, he retracted his chi and blood and gathered his dan at his lower abdomen. The dazzling stars moved slightly, immediately outlining the word, fighting, that was full of power. Boom! His dan chi erupted like a volcano. Lu Cheng's muscles expanded, and he grew taller and bigger. He broke the invisible shackles, and the sound of shattering could be heard from his surroundings. As the white gas scattered, he regained his mobility. He turned his back, raised his shoulders, swung his arms, and threw a punch into the air, breaking order with violence. Boom! His fist hit the side of the saber, and the blurry darkness dissipated. The god-slaying saber bent like a bow, and it finally appeared clearly. It was a dark saber about the length of an arm. It was heavy and restrained, and between the reflections, there was a golden glow flowing, making the surroundings even darker. At that moment, Lu Yongyuan shook his wrist. The god-slaying saber bounced up and straightened with a clang. Following which, he slashed again and again from left and right, as though he was writing the character 4-8. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Lu Yongyuan repeated the process, slashing the character 4-8 again and again. The more he slashed, the faster he got. The sound of the wind was intense, and there was a hint of blood in it. Lu Qing felt as though he had encountered a heavy downpour. He took a deep breath and maintained his visualization, turning into a violent snowstorm. He slashed, collapsed, blasted, and whipped, using speed against speed and continuous attacks. Clang! Dang 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 dang! Crisp clashing sounds reverberated in all directions, like raindrops hitting banana leaves. Frost formed on both sides of the black god-slaying saber. It was getting heavier and heavier, more and more burdensome. On the other hand, Lu Qing gradually felt numb and powerless, as though he was slowly being corroded by a dark poison. He felt that there was no end to Lu Yongyuan's knife momentum. It would continue until it destroyed him. It was like the night sky in the evening. No matter how much the sun struggled, how much it burned the clouds, it would still be slowly but surely swallowed up, leaving no trace behind. Clang! Clang! Lu Qing clenched his fists and swung his elbows, barely managing to block the long blade. He knew that he couldn't continue like this, or else he would be in a completely passive position. The outcome of the battle would be in the hands of others. He could only hope that Lu Yongyuan wouldn't be able to hold on for long. All of a sudden, he curled up his body and squatted down. With his strength, chi, blood, and mind, the god-slaying saber struck nothing but air. Boom! Before the long blade struck, he exploded his Dan force and exerted force in his legs. Instead of retreating, he pounced towards Lu Yongyuan, holding a ball of light purple flames in each hand. If he dodged or retreated, the knife momentum would come continuously, and he wouldn't be able to shake it off. The best way to deal with this move was to attack. Pouncing close to the ground, Lu Qing clasped his hands in front of him, wanting to collide with the two balls of purple flames and shoot out a prairie fire. But just as Lu Qing leaped, Lu Yongyuan took a step back with perfect precision, reducing the distance between them by a centimeter. It was as though he was dancing with his opponent. With a flick of his wrist, the long blade came down swiftly towards Lu Qing. It left a streak of light in its wake, like a bolt of lightning that cut through the darkness. The darker the surroundings, the more powerful it was. At the same time, an explosion sounded in the air, like a thunderbolt on a sunny day. Lu Cheng's scalp went numb. Without thinking, he pulled his shoulders and forcefully shook his arms upwards, letting the purple flames collide with the blade. Boom! Purple flames gushed out, wrapping around the long blade. It was so viscous that it looked like lava. Taking advantage of the momentary pause of the god-slaying blade, Lu Qing leaped backwards, his face almost touching the ground, as though he was skiing. Poof! The long blade broke through the purple flames, brushed past Lu Cheng's leg, and fell into the air. Lu Yongyuan's face was expressionless. Following this trend, he squatted down, letting the long blade, which was emitting dense darkness, stab into the ground. Bam! Bam! Yenjika covered her mouth, while Brahman and the others screamed. In their eyes, Lu Qing had fallen into an extremely dangerous situation, and in his current state, it would be difficult for him to respond well. At this critical moment, Lu Qing retracted his limbs and curled up his body, avoiding most of the bam. In his mind, he quickly outlined the deep and cold darkness and the heavy sun that had crashed into this area. Mutated version of severe warning. To him, performing a simplified physical invulnerability move was already very fast. Bam! Lu Qing shook his shoulders, swung his arm, and punched down with his right fist. The surface was covered in darkness, heavy and restrained, as though it could absorb everything in the world. Whoosh! 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 7 or 8 bam of bam were affected, slightly changing their trajectories, and struck Lu Cheng's fist, dissolving into the darkness. Immediately after, the darkness exploded, the force spurting out and hitting the ground. Lu Qing took advantage of this to bounce up and change his direction in midair. Just as he stepped on the ground, he stirred up a strong wind and changed his position, avoiding further attacks. During this process, his right fist was covered in cuts, and darkness invaded. Much of his strength was absorbed, and he could only droop weakly. Lu Yongyuan paused again, nodded with satisfaction, and said, "The 3 strikes just now are called Dusk, Heaven Spear, and Raging Waves. Next is the 8th strike. Extreme Electricity." Before Lu Yongyuan finished his sentence, he had already bent down. His long blade turned back as though it was returning to its sheath, and then it bounced back out. It was at this moment that Lu Qing sensed an extreme sense of danger. Without giving it much thought, he straightened his back, took a step to the side, and turned his body sideways. All of a sudden, a flash of light appeared in front of Lu Qing. The long blade was already at the spot he had been standing at. It was unimaginably fast. Behind the gleam of the blade were the waves of air that had been split apart. They revealed their form and clustered around extreme electricity. Boom! Only when everything was clear did the strong sonic boom enter Lu Cheng's ears. Rolling waves of air were sent flying in all directions. It was similar to the flying dragon takedown of the Xinjai sect. They were both at the pinnacle of blade speed. Clang! The god-slaying saber seemed to be unable to withstand the pressure. It trembled and made a noise, but at the same time, it seemed to be enjoying itself. It couldn't help but let out a loud cry. Lu Yongyuan's expression darkened slightly. A glint flashed in his eyes, and he retracted his long blade and held it horizontally across his lower abdomen. Suddenly, a sharp glint spurted out, and the surroundings turned pitch black. The sun at 2 or 3 in the afternoon was swallowed by the heavenly hound. In the endless darkness, Lu Qing couldn't see or hear anything. Even his spirit seemed to have lost its support. It was empty and there was no feedback. This caused him to feel a chill in his heart. He felt as if he was about to be devoured by the heavenly hound. Channeling his qi and blood, Lu Qing was not stingy with his flame force. There was no technique involved in the flame force. It was just a lot of it, and it was just fast. Blazing white light gathered and blasted out, quickly falling into the darkness and disappearing before Lu Cheng's eyes. However, after that, there was no burst of fire, no sound of explosion. Everything around him was silent, as if it was dead. The darkness surged in uncontrollably. Lu Qing actually felt like admitting defeat. However, his willpower was strong, and his ice heart was unaffected. All kinds of thoughts still flashed through his mind. The 9 words formula was used simultaneously. Internally, it was used to increase one's mental strength. Externally, it would allow one to face the enemy without fear, weaken the enemy, and strengthen oneself. Within a certain range, one would be able to see through illusions caused by mental suppression. Lu Qing suspected that most of the effects of this slash were illusions, an experience after one's mind was blinded. Once the 9 words formula appeared, his vision suddenly became clear. The dim glow of the saber had already reached him, but it didn't cover up the surrounding colors and flames from the flame force explosion. Raising one hand to protect his face, he clenched his other hand into a fist and punched out. Lu Qing found the god-slaying saber hidden in the dim glow. Clang! The long saber trembled and slanted to the side. Lu Cheng's body was covered in wounds. All of them were pitch-black wounds that curled up his skin and flesh. His mind went blank for a moment, as if he had been poisoned. He quickly gathered his qi and blood, alleviating most of the effects. Taking advantage of the situation, he punched forward, switching from defense to offense. Lu Yongyuan floated backwards, his long saber drawing a line in front of him, separating the two. Then he said in a deep voice, "I've lost." 9 slashes had passed. Lu Qing stopped in his tracks. He couldn't believe it. In order to respond, he had used all his strength and racked his brains. He didn't even count how many slashes there were. Lu Yongyuan looked straight into his eyes and said, 9 slashes have passed. I've lost. The last slash is called eternal silence. After that, he shook his head, turned around, and left. Half in thought, half in despair, he muttered, "Too slow, too slow." Chapter 643. Looking at Lu Yongyuan's straight but bleak back as he left, Lu Qing didn't feel much joy from winning the match. Even when the referee announced his victory, it didn't cause any ripples in his heart. If he had finally defeated this titled mighty one after a tough battle, even if he wasn't paying attention and didn't perform well, he would definitely be overjoyed and excited. However, after 9 such strikes, Lu Yongyuan, who still had a lot of fighting power left, admitted defeat and left. It made him feel suffocated and didn't feel like he was the winner. Does this count as running away after showing off? How exciting! Lu Qing complained to himself as the thought flashed through his mind. Recalling what had just happened, Lu Yongyuan had indeed shown him what a top-notch physical invulnerability expert was. It could even be said that he was the world's top-notch saber technique. If he hadn't paused twice in between to describe the moves, he might not have been able to withstand more than 9 strikes. This is the difference between me and a true top-notch expert. Lu Qing came to this realization as he recalled the battle from before. He vaguely felt that he had made some progress under the pressure of Lu Yongyuan's 9 strokes bladesmanship. He seemed to be able to grasp the techniques of physical invulnerability moves at his fingertips and was no longer restricted by the rules of the past. Thinking back to the past 10 days of sparring with Xian Xiaoya, Wang Kei, and Living Buddha, Lu Qing suddenly felt that he hadn't come here in vain. He had seen and learned a lot. Wasn't this the reason why he joined the master battle in the first place? All of a sudden, Lu Cheng's emotions were cleared and he was in a good mood. His footsteps were steady but fast as he walked to the riverside. He couldn't wait to share his joy with his little fairy. "Ha ha ha, you've been boasting. I thought you couldn't block his 9 strikes." Setting off firecrackers expression, Brahman said. Looking at his boastful look, "I've been nervous for a long time." Eternal nightfall, Yan Shaoling added. Following which, she had a question. Didn't he say 9 strikes? He must have slashed at least a dozen times. Chop. In your mouth, a grandmaster of the way of the saber is like a hooligan on the streets. Facepalm expression, unparalleled Dragon King explained, covering face expression. In a martial arts competition, 9 sabers means 9 moves. Oh. So that's how it is. I knew that he's a titled expert, so he can't be so shameless. Yan Shaoling suddenly realized. She had been holding back this question for a long time. Nye Chi asked curiously, why did the god-slaying saber make a promise of 9 moves? I saw that he was in pretty good condition at the end. There shouldn't be any problems if we continue to fight. Road to the arena drifted over and explained, I'm not sure. Martial artists who use the saber like to leave no room for retreat. They like to cut off all means of retreat. They don't give themselves the slightest chance of hesitation or wavering. With this, they push their will to the extreme and make their state exceed normal. Just now, the god-slaying saber was like that. It compressed all hope into 9 moves and gave off the most dazzling light. Really? Yan Shaoling was stunned. She felt like her horizons had been broadened. Of course. Road to the Arena replied with a smirk. Of course it's fake. I just made it up. How can martial artists like us understand the thoughts of physical invulnerability experts? At this moment, there was a heated discussion on Weibo. They felt that Lu Yongyuan's choice was incomprehensible. There's no problem with the promise of 9 moves. This is the attitude of a senior mighty warrior towards a rising star. However, during the battle, Lu Yongyuan paused twice to give Lu Qing a chance to regroup. He didn't have to continue dodging and making others feel like he didn't want to win. The well-known difference of 1 move, expressed his doubts. Poison Milk Hierarch, He Xiaowei reposted. Maybe there's a big problem with Lu Yongyuan's new move and he needs to take a break. Or maybe Lu Yongyuan was too confident and wanted to give the full 9 moves a chance, but he made a mistake. There are too many reasons like this. We don't have to care about them. Let's happily discuss how Lu Qing entered the top 16 as a third-pin martial artist. This isn't something that happens often. When this was said, there were many comments. They all had the same feeling. A physical invulnerability expert defeated a titled Mighty One in his first few matches. No one else can do that. Yeah. Although there are various reasons, it's still a shocking thing. Oh right, is there a lip reader? I couldn't hear what Lu Yongyuan said at the end. He said it was too slow, too slow. What he meant was that the 9th move gave Lu Qing too much time to react. Even if he made a mistake, he still had a chance to make up for it. I admire people with special skills like the one above. Lu Yongyuan hasn't named his self-created move, right? Let me think of one. It's from the Dark Sect, but it's also different from the Dark Sect. Why don't we call it the non-Dark Sect? Lu Family Saber. It's simple and clear. Amidst the various opinions, Lu Qing ended his chat with Yan Jika. He had a good night's sleep and completely eliminated the dark poison in his body. At 7:30 p.m., he watched the remaining 8 elimination matches in the hotel. He was excited about the few matches between the strong. In the third last match, Renli went up the stage and challenged Lion King Shang Yud. Her opponent was a monster with tenacious vitality and astonishing recovery speed. Apart from attacking his vitals, it was almost impossible to break through his defense. Renli's sword could cut through mummies and dark night bats, but the most she could do was leave a shallow wound on the Lion King's body. Such a wound would heal in a few seconds or a dozen seconds. After trying hidden scent and other moves, but to no avail, Renli could only rely on the wind sex movements to move around and fight. However, after a long battle, it was inevitable that she would slip up. She was immediately caught by Lion King and defeated in a round of counterattacks. You can think of what to treat us to now. After the match, Peng Liyun immediately tagged Lu Qing in the group chat. Lu Qing replied, I feel like this meal should be treated by God-slaying saber. If you can get him to treat us, we don't mind. Peng Liyun replied emotionlessly. I think he'll kill me. Wiping cold sweat expression. And Xiaoyang laughed and said, is it too late for me to book a ticket now? No problem. The top 16 match is the night after tomorrow. Renli suddenly replied. Didn't you just finish your match? Peng Liyun was a little stunned. Renli replied matter-of-factly, I just returned to the changing room and wanted to urge Lu Qing. Chihuahuas are always full of energy. Lu Qing laughed and shook his head. After half an hour, the remaining 2 matches ended. Lu Qing realized that other than himself, the rest of the top 16 contestants were all famous mighty ones. Warrior Sage, Qian Donglu, Kiran Dongbaxian, Wisdom King, Zhi Hai, Taoist Sword, Wu Qiao, Spear King, Huang Ku, Clown, Gu Jianxi, Queen of Thought, Fei Dan, Optimus Prime, Long Zhen, Blazing Sword, Qi Ling. If they weren't titled Mighty Ones, they were strong reserves for the title. Looking at these, Lu Cheng's mouth twitched. He sent a message to Yenjika. I feel like a sheep in a pack of wolves. All around me are big shots. Yenjika was taking a break between classes when she saw a notification. Because of the word husky, she clicked on it with interest. The main theme of the news was that a husky had sneaked into a pack of wolves in a zoo and was hiding there. He looked so dumb that he couldn't keep up his act. As she was browsing, she saw a message from Cheng. She switched the interface and saw the content. A sheep in a pack of wolves? It's obviously. Pfft. Thinking of the previous news, Yenjika couldn't help but laugh. She quickly covered her mouth with her hand. Her body trembled for a long time as if someone had poked her laughing nerve. After a while, she recovered and replied with a cute expression, yes, yes, yes. Brother Cheng, you're right. Your answer feels weird. Frowning expression, puzzled expression, replied Lu Cheng. No, I'm not. Replied Yenjika with her dimples. What did you think of? Lu Cheng didn't believe her. He guessed very well. Yenjika sent an emoji of rolling its eyes with a hint of complacency. Have you heard the song of Little Dragon Man? My answer is in it, the answer is in the song. Confused and curious, Lu Cheng searched the song and browsed through the lyrics. He saw a dozen words, I'm not telling you, I'm not telling you, I'm not telling you. Lu Cheng was dumbfounded with his mouth half open. After a while, he burst out laughing. He couldn't wait to pull Yenjika into his arms. However, there was a TV, a coffee table, and a small fridge in front of him, but there was no beautiful figure. He stared blankly and was silent for more than 10 seconds. Then he smiled again and expressed his admiration for his wife's wit in a light tone. The top 16 of the Master Battle drew lots to determine the later matches. The winners and their counterparts would enter the top 8 and the semifinals. During the process of drawing lots, the conversations between the masters attracted a lot of attention. When Lu Cheng got the second place in the bottom half, he heard his name. His opponent was Wuyue Club, Gu Jianxi. The clown, Gu Jianxi. P.S. Why didn't you vote for it? You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.